Good afternoon. Committee. Good afternoon. I know yesterday was a long day. Today is February 27th. Welcome to the bill hearings for the House Ways and Means Committee. First, we have, for the first time in the committee, Chair Barnes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Those who are taking the pen off, a bill over here.
Have you ever had a bill in Ways and Means in your?
Remember being out of appropriations in a decade. So if I did, it was a long time ago.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. I feel very welcome. Thank you.
And so you're going to do House Bill 1072 first?
Sure.
Okay.
House Bill 1072 is, I believe this is the cigarette or the alcohol?
Do you know how it works when you present a
Yeah,
bill?
no, I'm usually on the other side. This is the alcohol tax. Let me just say this. Buckle, don't get ideas over there. Let me say this about both bills. I noticed you all have a lot of revenue bills, and I'm certainly not an expert on revenue by any means. What I do know, sitting in my seat on the Appropriations Committee, is that we need revenue. And some would say that we can sort of try to cut our way out of the problems that we face. But let me tell you from my seat, $3 billion, those are not cuts that we will be able to make and balance a budget. $3 billion is cancellation of the Blueprint program. It's cutting Medicaid. It's cutting community colleges and higher ed and all the things that make our state great. And so these bills are offered. I noticed nobody had these options, so I'm putting the options in front of the committee. Are these the perfect options? I don't know. That's for your sort of learned sort of revenue hand to decide. But I feel it's important that you have all the options available to you. And so I put these two bills in to add to the panoply of options that you have in front of you, in hopes that we do have a point where we acknowledge that we're not going to be able to make $3 billion in cuts. And that $3 billion doesn't even account for the revenue problem we have on the transportation side. So these are a couple of options, certainly not the expert on either of them, but I leave it to you all and happy to put it in front of you.
So first of all, Chair Barnes, thank you for the use of the word panoply. That was awesome. So what we'll do is thank you for presenting, in all seriousness, thank you for presenting House Bill 1072 and 1073. And thank you personally for your commitment to the Blueprint and to your commitment to the students in our state and the teachers and all the support staff in our state. Thank you.
Well, Madam Chair, let me say thank you to you, because I know there's no greater champion for the Blueprint and these many programs than you and your committee. We were able to work on these things together over the last 2 years, and I know that you are equally as adamant about the need to preserve them and move forward with those things.
Thank you. So I'll let you go.
Okay.
Do the things you guys do over there.
All right.
And we'll take it from here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Let's give them a round of applause on the way out. So what we will do, folks, is I will call folks up on House Bill 1072 first. If you come up and you want to testify on both, we can give you extra time to do that. Or if you just want, but let me know when you come up. So we're going to be hearing both of them first. We're going to be here both of them, 1072 and 1073. I'm just going to call the people from the list on 1072 first, but if you want to tell me you want to talk about 1073 while you're up here so you don't have to wait, we can let you do that, and you can get out of here. So just let me know when you come up. So if that doesn't make sense, just ask me a question when you come up. That's fine. So on 1072, just starting with that list, we have Julie Verratti, Jack Milani, Melissa Allen. I don't know if that's Allen or Allen. Allen. Melvin Thompson. And I'll call Nick Manis. These are all unfavorables, folks. And if someone indicates that they are testifying on two bills, you can give them 3 minutes, if that's easy to do. If not, we'll just roll with it. That's easy. Okay, thanks. Okay.
Hello. Thank you, Chair Atterbury. Thank you, Vice Chair Wilkins. Thank you, members of the committee, for allowing me to be here. My name is Julie Verratti. I'm one of the founders of Denizens Brewing Company, based out of Riverdale Park. I'm here on behalf of Denizens, as well as the breweries that are in this state. I wanted to speak on this bill in the negative because as a business that is still coming out of COVID and recovering from all of the losses that we faced during those years, adding another tax to the bill that a consumer or a guest of ours is sitting in the room, they're going to put that on us. They're not going to see that as a tax that's going to the state. They're going to see that as us raising our prices once again. And the issue is, I understand that the state needs more revenue. I absolutely do. Small businesses also need more revenue. And if the taxes go up, that prevents me from being able to raise my prices so that we're able to bring in more revenue for our company. And it's as simple as that for me. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, Jack Milani, Legislative Co-Chair for Maryland State Licensed Beverage Association. We represent alcohol beverage licensees in the state. I just want to go back to the beginning of the sales tax, where the alcohol tax was done as a sales tax. Years ago, President Miller grabbed us and said, look, there's 3 or 4 proposals for excise taxes. And quite honestly, I don't like them because I don't know if you're familiar, but with an excise tax, the supplier has a cost and he marks it up, sends it to the wholesaler. They look at it as a cost that's already been marked up and mark it up again. And when it hits the retailer, it's a cost and we mark it up again. So President Miller said, let's do what DC does. Let's take it from 6 to 9. And what we'll do is we won't be back here ever again because every time the prices go up, the state will get more money. So reluctantly, and those who were around when Miller was here, we didn't have a whole lot of choice. So we reluctantly went along with it. And if you recall, they accelerated from a 3-year phase into 1-year phase in, and it created a $54 million surplus days after the budget had passed, which probably produced one of the ugliest hearings on that Saturday before Sine Die as to how they were going to split it. So, it was the money got there. And again, I think when you look at it, you have to look at the notes that was provided, the analysis, fiscal analysis. They talk about Delaware at 0%. I can remember my members on the Eastern Shore flipping out because they're like, they've got billboards already talking about the fact that we don't have sales tax and Maryland's going to take 3% more onto their alcohol. So, my concern is the borders. West Virginia's at 6%. We're at 9%. So West Virginia, the guys in Western Maryland, folks in Western Maryland, Pennsylvania's at 6%. This is a disadvantage. I think it's regressive and we would ask for an unfavorable. Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Melissa Allen, and I'm the 3rd generation wine producer running my family's 48-year-old winery in Mount Airy. I'm here testifying against this bill on behalf of all the wineries, breweries, and distilleries in the state of Maryland. Manufacturing craft beverages here in Maryland costs significantly more than our national and international competitors due to just economies of scale. We aren't that big of businesses. Our small craft producers are unable to lower prices on the shelves to make up for the increase in sales tax that consumers would pay, like the larger competitors might and can do. This will make our products less competitive in the marketplace, therefore disproportionately hurting Maryland businesses, economic development, jobs, and the Marylanders who work in these industries, not to mention the lasting impact closures would have on land preservation and family farms that our farm wineries, farm breweries, and farm distilleries own and operate. The alcohol industry has seen a decrease in sales over the last few years as inflation has been driving concern of many consumers, forcing consumers to switch from their favorite local products to more cost-efficient, mass-produced and distributed ones. An increase in sales tax would slow down sales for our craft beverages, putting some of our members at risk of closing. Inflation and supply chain issues in 2020 and 2021 have also played a massive role in the increase of cost of production within the alcohol industry. From 2020 to 2022, the cost of raw materials to produce a bottle of wine went up over 10%, which is a cost that many small producers have to push onto the consumer. In this tight market with global competition, it's difficult for local producers to demand higher prices while their national and international competitors can easily absorb those extra costs. With the risk of Maryland business, decreasing economic development, and losing jobs filled by passionate individuals sharing their craft with Maryland citizens, Maryland wineries, breweries, and distilleries are against the proposed increase in alcohol sales tax.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Melvin Thompson. I represent the Restaurant Association of Maryland, and we're also opposed to this legislation for all the reasons that you've already heard. The only thing I'll add is that our industry has a particularly razor-thin profit margin. And so for businesses that have alcohol licenses, those alcohol sales really contribute to their bottom line, especially for restaurants that don't have high volume seating capacity. After the last increase in the alcohol sales tax back in 2011, many of our restaurants did see a decrease in their alcohol sales, and this is extremely concerning. We're already taxed at a higher rate at 9% versus the regular sales tax at 6%. And for those reasons, we oppose this legislation and request an unfavorable report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Vice Chairman, Nick Manis, representing the Maryland Beer Wholesalers Association. The Beer Wholesalers Association are made up of 22 family-owned and operated businesses throughout the state. As previously mentioned, when this went up to 9%, there were billboards with my members that distribute in Ocean City saying, please come over to Delaware. We charge no tax. So there was business loss there. In addition, Jack mentioned the excise tax. This is in addition to the excise tax. So Maryland is taxed for beer and all alcohol beverages, taxed on a manufacturer's level for the excise tax, and this is in addition to the sales tax. If you look at our surrounding states, Delaware 0%, Pennsylvania 6%, Virginia 5.3%, West Virginia 6%. So in those bordering states, we definitely lose business. And over the past, you can look at the tobacco tax annual report. Beer sales have remained constant, no increase. Matter of fact, a slight decrease. And people will say that during COVID, one of the things that were open were the packaged goods stores. However, Melvin's clients, the Restaurant Association, all those were closed. So even though our off-premise accounts might have been up, it didn't offset the closures of the on-premise accounts. For those reasons, we ask for an unfavorable report on this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much. So that concludes the hearing on House Bill 1072. And now we'll call folks that Delegate Barnes already presented House Bill 1073, Lori Hale and Lance Kilpatrick.
Ready. Good afternoon. My name is Laura Hale. I'm the Director of Government Relations with the American Heart Association. Thank you so much, Chair Atterbury, and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak today. We speak in strong support of this bill with a small amendment. We would like to increase the tax from a 75-cent increase on cigarettes to $1.50. The reason being is for public health. As well as for needed tax revenue. When taxes are raised at under $1, we see that the industry is able to create coupons. And so we don't see the same public health benefits across the board when we increase the cigarette tax as less than $1. Additionally, there are other tobacco products and e-cigarettes that could also be included in a tax increase. And we would urge that all products are increased at the same rate so as not to encourage switching between products across the way. Using any kind of tobacco products are dangerous for your health. And so making sure that all of them are included is important. If we raise this by $1.50, we could bring in an additional $50 million to the state from the cigarette tax increase alone based on our calculations. In addition to this, there are many great projects before you all, and I will say the one that is near and dear to the Heart Association's heart is around healthy school meals for all. Raising this this tax could be one of the paths forward on how do we fund this great piece of legislation and making sure that every kid could have a no-cost breakfast and no-cost lunch when they go to school. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Lance Kilpatrick. I am the Maryland Director of Government Relations for the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. Like my colleague here, we also strongly support, with amendments, Chair Barnes's bill suggesting that we raise it to $1.50 a pack and bring parity for taxes for other tobacco products as well. In 2024, it's estimated that 36,410 Marylanders will hear the chilling phrase, "You have cancer." And it is also estimated that 10,310 of them will die from cancer. 27.3% of cancer deaths in Maryland are attributable to smoking, according to the American Cancer Society. Now, in addition, we all know that there's a serious issue with using tobacco products by our youth. 5% of Maryland high school students smoke cigarettes, 6% smoke cigars, 4.6% use smokeless tobacco, and stunningly, 23% use electronic smoking devices. Now, I submitted a 3-page memorandum in support with amendments. I'm not going to read all that, but let me summarize for you. We have a looming revenue crisis before us. In addition, we have public health needs of Marylanders that require constant vigilance. Here we have legislation which addresses two separate needs: raising needed revenue to support Maryland priorities, while also fighting back against cancer-causing big tobacco. We urge you to act now and not wait. Cancer doesn't wait, and neither should you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now the unfavorables. Moinul Mozamunder, Nasir Chima, Vincent Mayer, Bruce Bariano, Mike O'Halloran, Kirk McAulay, Sarah Price. And then we do have a good amount of virtuals. Ooh, a lot of virtuals signed up, folks.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the House Ways and Means Committee. For the record, my name is Mike O'Halloran, here today representing the Mid-Atlantic Petroleum Distributors Association, which constitutes convenience stores, energy marketers throughout the state. You have my written testimony on record, so I'll just try and pull from that and be as brief as I can. A lot of talk thus far, including the sponsor, is we're talking about revenue, ways to raise revenue. And I'm here to say that this bill actually will have the opposite effect. When the General Assembly raised this tax in 2021, after a brief bump in revenue, the state is actually now seeing a decline in the revenue from tobacco sales. This bill will actually drive revenue out of the state. According to data from the Tax Foundation, Maryland actually ranks 8th nationally for cigarettes smuggled into the state, costing it nearly $220 million. And I think what you'll likely hear from some of the operators up here with me is that it's not going to only lead to losses in revenue, losses in sales, but it's also going to expand and increase the illicit market, which is something that nobody wants to see. So again, appreciate the sponsor's intent, perhaps, for trying to find ways to fill the structural deficit. But for this one, we respectfully request an unfavorable committee report. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is, thank you for giving me opportunity to speak today. My name is Moinul Mazumdar, and I am the owner of a convenience store in Frederick County. I'm here to oppose the cigarette excess tax. Since the last excess tax increase on cigarettes, my business was suffered. And this drastic decline has had a devastating impact on my business. and livelihood. As a small business owner, I already face numerous challenges, fixed costs, such a minimum wage, inflation on food prices, electricity price, and rent have steadily increased over the years. These rising expenses have put a sustain on my ability to maintain probability and sustain my business. Furthermore, the COVID-19 pandemic has dealt a severe blow to my business. Even after a month of the restriction and closure, I have not seen my sales bounce back to pre-pandemic level. Also, I have a gas station with my convenience store. My gas volume never came back whatever it was. The financial burden of the pandemic has already left me in a bad position, struggling to keep my business afloat. So I urge you to reconsider the proposed cigarette excise tax. Please take into account to the hardship faced my small business and the consumer we serve. We simply do not have the capacity to weather another tax, a large tax increase
Thank
in
you.
just 3 years. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time and consideration.
Good afternoon. My name is Nasser Jima. I signed up, but I never got an email, so I don't have a prepared testimony. I don't know. That's what I was checking. If I'm
You're
list.
on my list. I called your name. so
Oh, really? I don't know.
just-
You
know what?
check
There-
my email.
Speak from your heart.
All right, I do.
Just speak from your heart.
All right. Thanks, Madam Chairman. We are here to, I've been here before, and people in this favor, bill, they always bring the cancer in and teenager smoking. We are a very responsible retailers. We actually supported when the legislation came from age 18 to 21. So we understand, teenager is a problem smoking. So we really go by the policy, check everybody ID. And I think as my friend, he explained everything, we just suffer from COVID and we still not pick up the sales we have before COVID. And secondly, is the cigarettes and tobacco is a dying category. Nobody has increased in sales. And this bill will, with inflation and all that, everything prices are going up, and it will put a burden on adult smokers and retailers to replace the inventory. We have a wholesaler last year. They refused to deliver in some part of the state because of people were robbing their delivery trucks because of cigarettes. So we adding more money into cigarettes as cost, and it's encouraged people. Most of robberies these days, instead of 7-Eleven get robbed, they have very little money. People rob cigarettes because they're so expensive. So it's a lot of problems. So I request a committee to give an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and esteemed members of the House Ways and Means Committee. My name is Vijay Mayer. I serve as the Executive Director for the Northeast Wholesalers Association, representing wholesale distributors across the region, supporting nearly 24,000 American jobs. Today, I present our opposition to HB 1073, a proposal to increase the cigarette tax by 75 cents per pack. Currently, Maryland's excise tax on cigarettes is $3.75, and this bill suggests raising it to $4.50. This increment is significant when compared to neighboring states like Virginia at 60 cents, Delaware at $2.10, Pennsylvania at $2.60, and West Virginia at $1.20. Maryland's tax rate stands out, creating an economic imbalance. The repercussions of this anomaly are evident. As mentioned previously, Maryland ranks 8th in the country for cigarette smuggling at nearly 30%, resulting in an estimated loss of $220 million for the state. Increasing the tax to $4.50 will likely exacerbate this issue. Recent analysis indicates 1,600 retailers within 10 miles of the Maryland border, with no resident living more than 35 miles from a border. This bill risks driving cigarette consumers out of state, harming both our state and our members. Advocates argue that this bill aims to protect the health of Maryland citizens, but this outcome isn't feasible. Commerce in Maryland extends beyond our borders, and residents will simply purchase products out of state, leaving the state burdened with healthcare costs without the expected financial support from excise taxation. As mentioned earlier, a similar scenario unfolded in 2021 when the expected excise was not yielded. When tobacco consumers seek cigarettes out of state, locally owned small businesses, including our members, suffer. These losses impact operating expenditures, jeopardizing contract agreements with union employees, many of whom are employed by our members. While I understand the intent of this legislation is to increase state revenue and reduce smoking prevalence, the proposed measures will likely fall short. May not meet budget expectation. Local businesses will bear the brunt, and good-paying union jobs will be at risk. I urge you to vote against 1073. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and honorable members of the committee. My name is Sarah Price, and I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Alliance in strong opposition to this legislation. To respect your time, I would say me too to all of the previous testimony, but I would also draw your attention to our written testimony, which actually covers a wide variety of tobacco bills that are being heard not only in this committee, but also in economic matters. We hope that should you choose to deliberate on and move this legislation, that you would consider the multiple ways that the legislature is choosing to target the tobacco industry this year. And please consider the impact that all of these bills together would have on small businesses in Maryland. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Kurt McAulay. I represent service stations, convenience stores, and automobile repair shops in the state of Maryland. You have my written testimonies. I will be short, and I echo what everyone said, but at a tax of $4.50, Virginia would be $47. That would be $47.50 per carton. Virginia's tax is $6 per carton. You're allowed to bring 5 cartons of cigarettes back into Maryland. This makes people who wouldn't be illicit sellers, it makes them illicit sellers. You can put 4 people in a car and go to Virginia and come back and make $800 just in taxes alone, sell them on the street. They get to competing with the illegal markets that are already on the street, the gangs, and you end up with violence. The other thing this does is it really hurts youth smoking. All of our people check IDs. These people on the street that will be selling this stuff, they don't check no IDs, they don't collect no taxes. It also hurts our retailers when that person doesn't come in to buy tobacco, it goes other places to buy it, whether it's on the street or whether it's in Virginia, West Virginia, or Delaware. You lose the gas sales, you lose ancillary sales inside the store, and Maryland loses all the taxes either way. So I'd urge an unfavorable report. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much. Just to be sure, Vincent Mayor, Bruce Bariano. Okay, we'll go to the virtual people that I understand are in the waiting room. Alex Casper. Okay, go ahead for 2 minutes, please.
Atterbury, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide comments. My name is Alex Casper, and I am the Director of Advocacy for the American Lung Association. We are here favorable with amendments on House Bill 1073. You have my written comments, so I'll focus on a couple of key points. You also heard from my colleagues, so I'll just fill in a little bit. Tobacco use remains the leading cause of preventable death in the US, killing estimated 480,000 Americans and 7,500 Marylanders each year. One of the most effective ways to reduce tobacco use is to significantly increase the tax on all products, including e-cigarettes. Increases must be significant, otherwise price increases can easily be counteracted with coupons and discounts. We do believe that all products should be taxed in an equalized rate to cigarettes so that people don't switch but quit. Data has shown us that every 10% increase in the price reduces consumption by 4% in adults and 7% in youth. While the bill currently drafted shows a 75% increase, we would encourage amendments to increase the cigarette tax by $1.50 per pack and equalize the rate of the other products to that. By making the amendments, approximately 15,000 adults would quit smoking and 4,600 deaths would be prevented. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments, and we do encourage amendments to the bill.
Any questions for Ms. Casper? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Kristen Jimson.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide comments today. I'm Kristen Jimson, Regional Advocacy Director for the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. I will just echo everything our public health partners shared today. We strongly support House Bill 1073 with amendments to increase the cigarette tax by $1.50 per pack and raise the taxes on other tobacco products to parity rates. I have 3 data points to share and then I'll be finished. More than $7.5 million in healthcare costs would be averted in the first 5 years after a $1.50 tax increase. More than $224 million in healthcare cost savings would accrue over the lifetime of those prevented from becoming smokers and those who quit as a result of this increase. And based on a model developed by health economists, the American Cancer Society Action Network, and our organization, an increase to $1.50 in Maryland cigarette tax is projected to raise over $50 million in new revenue for the state in the first year. For these reasons and all the reasons shared by our partners in public health, the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids supports a favorable with amendments report from the Committee for House Bill 1073. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Kyle Feldman, please. Nope, yes, Kyle Feldman. Mr. Feldman, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the House Ways and Means Committee. My name is Kyle Feldman. I'm the Executive Vice President of Government Affairs for Century Distributors, a wholesale business located in Rockville, Maryland. I'm here today in opposition of House Bill 1073, which proposes to raise the cigarette tax in Maryland to $4.50 per pack. As a longstanding business in the state, I urge you to vote against this bill for several reasons. First, Maryland already has the 5th highest cigarette tax in the country, and its tax is higher than any of its border states, as mentioned earlier. Increasing the tax by another 75 cents per pack would only exacerbate the problem with smokers crossing state lines to purchase cigarettes at a lower price. This would not only lead to a greater loss of tax revenue, but also create even more incentive for criminals to smuggle in illicit products and sell them at lower prices on the streets. It is important to note that based on the current tax rate, at least 28% of cigarettes sold in Maryland are already on the black market. Illicit products, according to the Mechanic Center for Public Policy. Due to that, it is estimated that Maryland is losing $220 million in state revenue. Further raising the cigarette tax in Maryland will only result in a more smuggling and even more lost revenue. If you don't think that would happen, take a look at the state of New York, which is the highest cigarette tax in the country. As a result, approximately 54% of cigarettes are smuggled into that state. Please don't follow down the same path as New York. Lastly, adult smoking rates in Maryland are at historically low levels, having declined by 55% since 2001. Targeting such small segment of individuals with the tax increase seems unfair and will not generate the revenue you desire. Additionally, over 50% of Maryland smokers earn less than $50,000 per year. I urge this committee to vote against House Bill 1073 instead of relying on regressive tax measures that primarily target a small group of individuals and will further fuel the smuggling of cigarettes. Thank you for considering my views on this important issue.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Balveer Singh. Mansour An.
Hello.
Hi, can you activate your video, please? Yeah, there you go. Go ahead.
Yes. Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chairman. My name is Mansour An, and I have been in small business for the last 29 years. I own a few gas stations, and I am against this bill for several reasons. You have my written testimony, but I would like to talk about a couple of things. Imagine raising the taxes on these cartons of cigarettes and for us carrying the inventory that we have to carry. It is very difficult for small businesses to handle that. Not only that, just thinking about the danger that our employees will face. Just give you an example. In one of my stores just a couple of weeks ago, they had broken in and stole the ATM machine. Imagine what happens with these cigarette cartons be so expensive and how we're going to protect our employees. It is really disturbing with the high inflation that exists now. Now we're expecting the customers to pay so much more for a pack of cigarettes. In addition to that, what happens to our businesses? I thought small business was the backbone of economy in this country. So with increased prices, customers aren't going to come inside our stores. They're not going to purchase other products. All it's going to do is having a white man outside of our location selling illegal cigarettes. So I'm definitely opposed this bill 1073. Just wanted to let you know some of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, sir. And finally, Hakim Raja.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Hakim Raja. I own two businesses, one in Hampstead, Maryland, and another in Greenbelt, Maryland. My family has operated the Greenbelt location for 20 years and the Hampstead location for 5 years. We employ a total of 25 employees in both establishments. I oppose House Bill number 1073. The bill will significantly disrupt both of my businesses. With inflation, we have already started to see lower operating profit. Back in 2021, the excise tax increase of $1.75 had already made a significant impact on my businesses. And dealing with COVID at the same time was putting a lot of pressure on both of my businesses. If this excise tax goes through, I will have to shell out $117,000 per year to make up for the tax increase. That leads to many issues. First would be the safety of my employees, as my businesses will be targeted more due to the large inventory of cigarettes. Currently, we employ 25 employees, but with that tax increase, I will have to downsize my payroll to make up for the additional $117,000 per year that I don't have right now. The employees of my establishments depend on my business for their livelihood. Most of my employees have been employed with us for 5+ years. Some of them have been with me for 20 years since we started. We pride ourselves in the customer service we are able to provide to our patrons, but with the excise tax increase, that will also most likely be affected due to the downsizing of my staff. Right now, we are open 24 hours a day, but that will also be in jeopardy due to the downsizing of my payroll. I appreciate you guys hearing out my concerns and listening to me. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 1073. Delegate Fair, House Bill 919, and whoever you would like to bring up with you.
All right. Very intimidating table to be at this morning. Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and esteemed members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Vera, representing House Bill 919. This bill seeks to enable and empower local county jurisdictions to change their property assessment rates for certain subclasses of property. I am proud to bring this bill forward on behalf of numerous counties who have asked for this authority, honoring their request to do more to assist all our communities on the ground. Counties across our state have different economies, each with unique challenges and opportunities. This bill acknowledges that reality and says to counties that they should have the same option that local municipalities currently have to set different property rates. The safeguards of this bill also guarantee that any additional revenue raised from these adjustments go toward the two areas of government that connect all of our communities: transportation and education. Finally, there is a cap placed on the counties, ensuring the Maryland General Assembly's intention to not grant unlimited authority to raise property rates. The cap of 12.5% guarantees that counties have adequate flexibility and guardrails. Is this good for building revenue locally? Absolutely. However, more importantly, this pragmatic approach acknowledges that our county officials are best positioned to make these rate decisions locally. Our job today is to remove the red tape from our counties and support their efforts to properly fund their jurisdictions. I now look forward to the testimony of the real experts on this bill, and I respectfully request a favorable report on HB 919. Thank you.
Next.
Yep.
Woo. Thank you. You all have had a busy couple days. I don't think it's a secret that counties are under a lot of pressure right now to fund education, transportation in particular, but a lot of the other things that we do, public safety. And that's also not a secret that the state regulates how counties can make the decisions about taxation. We're elected as county executives to make those tough decisions. We have budget town halls, and we have a very democratic process for how our communities make decisions about who gets taxed. So, we're capped at 3.2. Most counties in Maryland are at the cap of 3.2 on the income tax. So most of the rest of the revenue we get is on the property tax. And property taxes are regressive. There are some ways where people can get around them for elderly folks, but you have a bad year on income and you still got to pay your property tax. We can raise our property tax as high as we want. Baltimore City's over $2. Most counties are a little over $1. Anne Arundel is just under $1, and we like it that way. But we are looking at ways to create the revenue that we need. And this bill gives us an option. It allows us to go up, 12.5 cents per $100 for specific categories. I think in most cases, we'd be talking about commercial property. Other cities, we know municipalities in Maryland already have this authority, but the counties that they're in do not have this authority. Other jurisdictions do this all the time. Other states do this all the time. So I don't know whether we'll do it in Anne Arundel County, but I know that we'll look at whether or not it makes sense. And if we do, it'll go through a very robust public engagement process to get there. I know some other counties do plan to do this, and it's specifically for education and transportation, two areas where the state has put more pressure on the counties than we've had in the past. So I think this is very wise legislation. It's very relevant that the Maryland Association of Counties, bipartisan organization, is supportive of this, and I hope you all will be as well. Thank you. So thank you, Chair Atterbury and Vice Chair Wilkins for the opportunity to speak today, and as other council members in my county here. This is probably the most important bill in the legislature from my perspective from Montgomery County, and I want to tell you why. They've talked about what other municipalities can do in the authority issue, but I want to get to the heart of the matter. It's not just about funding for transportation, it's about funding for economic development. And I sit across the river from Fairfax, and everybody from my area all the way up to Baltimore asks about what Fairfax is doing and how Fairfax is growing. Fairfax is growing because they are investing. They have made major investments in transportation. Montgomery County is unable to do anything to match the investments that have been made in Northern Virginia. It's not just Fairfax, it's Northern Virginia.
little bit more than a dozen years ago, Northern Virginia counties came together with the business community and went to the state legislature, which was totally controlled by Republicans back then, and asked for the authority to have special taxing districts and differential taxes. With that money and with the guardrails that it could only be used for transportation so that the business community didn't have to worry that this was a backdoor to try to fund social needs that didn't get in the budget. With the caveats that were put on it, Virginia has built massive amounts of transportation projects. They have a Northern Virginia Transit Authority that pumps $500 million a year into several Northern Virginia counties. And the Northern Virginia counties have their own special taxing districts. Fairfax County, next across the river from Montgomery County, our base rate's $1.04, and that's it. Fairfax County, base rate of about $1.09, scheduled in this next budget to go up to $1.13. 12.5 cents on all commercial property in Fairfax County that goes to transportation projects. 0.7 cents on the sales tax that goes to all transportation projects. A business license tax that raises $200 million for Fairfax County alone every year. And special taxing districts that in Tyson's Corner, and with this new tax increase, will push taxes in Tyson's Corner to $1.53. If taxes were why businesses came to a jurisdiction, Montgomery County would have won this battle hands down years ago. We don't win because we are unable to build infrastructure. This tax bill gives us the ability to actually bond. We cannot bond off of impact taxes. Impact taxes are uneven and they come one time when a building's built. In Virginia, they're able to float bonds on the stream of revenues that comes from these tax districts. The businesses are relieved of the impact taxes on the front ends of their projects, which makes their projects not only more expensive, but they're passing them on to the tenants anyway. It puts a tax on a 20 or a 30-year bond, and the developers don't pay for anything that's not being bonded for. In other words, we have to construct the project and go into construction and float bonds in order to set the tax rates. Every new building that gets built, if you think about it, reduces the tax rate, because as the tax base increases, the tax rate decreases because you're only trying to fund a fixed amount of money in the annual bond payment. It's a virtuous cycle. Republicans in Virginia get it. Democrats in Virginia get it, and it's helped them grow. And for your perspective as a legislature, it takes some of the pressure off you to fund projects in Montgomery County, which are not small, but more importantly, it lets us be economically competitive and bring more money, not just into Montgomery County, but to the state. We don't see corporate taxes in Montgomery County. So anything we bring, the companies that are looking to come there are companies that are going to support your initiatives in the rest of the state. And I'm happy to do that. But in this county, my county needs to be successful. We have an opportunity to do that. And I'm asking you for a favorable report out of the committee, and happy to regale you with details if you want more information. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Kevin Cannell here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in strong support of this bill. This bill addresses a priority initiative for Maryland's 24 counties. It's one of 4 initiatives for the year, and I think that's important to note. This bill does 2 things. Number one, it enables counties to invest in safe, equitable, and sustainable transportation projects that reduce congestion, enhance quality of life, and strengthen the economy. The second thing this bill does is it gives counties tools to fully meet their obligation under the blueprint for Maryland's future. And that's important because we all want to make that work. Right now, we don't have the tools to do that, and some counties are in a bad spot. You have my written testimony. I want to talk about a few things here. So like I said, the blueprint is putting a lot of pressure on counties, just like the state. In addition, we face massive cuts to our transportation revenue in the BRFA this year. We just made a deal a few years ago to ramp up the highway users, and I'll talk about that in a second. This year, though, is hundreds of millions of dollars in the BRFA that is cut for local roads. And while the state has considerable flexibility to raise revenue, again, counties do not. So even if we wanted to raise revenue to absorb these massive cuts, there's no mechanism to do that other than massive increases in the property tax, which nobody wants to do. We have no authority in Maryland to levy our own transportation taxes. We rely on the state. And so I want to tell you a little bit about highway user revenue funding and what has happened, because this committee doesn't get to hear it very often. The one across the hall does. So the state created the highway user revenue formula in 1968. That's a combination of gas taxes, registration fees, and 30% of that was to go to the counties to maintain their roads and the municipalities, which makes sense because we maintain 4 out of 5 roads in the state. Your local governments do. So for decades, the state recognized that was the right way to do it. The Great Recession came along around 2009, and the state massively cut local transportation revenues by 90%, in fact, 90%. And we've never gotten back. That was supposed to be temporary. We've never gotten back. 23 counties' share of highway user revenues went from $300 million in 2007 to $40 million in 2018. Baltimore City took the biggest hit, $100 million in that time frame. We now pay for transportation with property taxes. People don't expect that, but that's the reality. Again, in the Bertha, we face a massive cut. And I know we're running out of time, but I just want to say this. Between the disparity grant cut in the budget and the blueprint, in Caroline County, a poor county, a disparity grant county, it equals a 10-cent property tax increase just for fiscal 25. They're asking me what they should do. I don't know what to tell them. I'm asking you, what should they do? They don't have anywhere else to go. It's a 10-cent property tax increase for a poor county, a disparity grant county. We'd ask for a favorable report.
Thank you. And I'm sure you'll have time to get your thought out because everybody's button is lit up here. So Delegate Taras has been lit up the longest. We'll start with her.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Kevin must really like this bill because this is the first time I've ever seen you go over your time limit.
That's true. That's true.
So I'm not going to minimize the need for counties to increase their revenue intake, but my concern is I know it was mentioned that the intent of this is to go after commercial properties, but the bill lists residential a lot, and I have a huge concern around our current affordable housing. Has that been discussed, and are you concerned that this will affect affordable housing? Yes.
So I can tell you that the whole reason we need this delineation is because right now we have a uniform tax rate. So if I go to raise taxes, it has to be raised on the commercial sector and the residential sector. So the only way for residents to pay zero is to differentiate in here that I can tax different classes of property, different rates. My full intention is to do residential at zero, including condominiums, which right now can get captured in the commercial stuff. Because so our goal is to focus on where we apply this primarily on commercial properties. This is the philosophy in Virginia. I mean, the business community there, when they argued for it in Richmond, was that this money and this investment provides targeted investments that increase the value of the land around their property by bringing in infrastructure, which they need to grow. That's what we want to do. If it was as simple as if I was after residents, I would just do a combined tax rate, and $2 out of every $3 would wind up coming from residents instead of from commercial property.
Got it. Thank
And
you.
if you have ideas about guardrails, so we don't go, nobody has the ability to go off on residential, feel free.
I definitely want to discuss that further. Thank you.
And if I could just add to that just briefly, that as we built out these subclasses, we talked about these subclasses, we were looking at SStat for guidance on what all the subclasses looked like. We didn't want to necessarily single out, and also just didn't want to not acknowledge all the existing subclasses that SStat recognizes in their own regulations. And so that's kind of how they all ended up in the bill in one fell swoop, just to make sure that we didn't do anything that accidentally was overly limiting. And so that, again, we can talk about that. That's where the county enabling portion comes in.
Understood. Thank you.
Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think that you've all, at least the county executive folks, have said what we're going to do, and I want to make sure that I'm getting this right. You want to increase property taxes on commercial properties in your counties. At least County Executive Elrick has said that pretty clearly. County Executive Pittman has said we may, we're not sure, we're going to have a process. Is that fair? What's Montgomery County's budget this year? What's our total amount?
North of $6 billion, and half of it goes to schools.
Right.
Half of it goes to the rest of the budget. And we're limited in bonding, just so you understand our capacity issues. $280 million a year in bonds. You can't build anything with that, particularly when the schools are devouring most of it.
That's what I just looked up. $6.8 billion budget. It's higher than Fairfax County from what I looked up.
Yes,
Now,
it is, because Fairfax County, Fairfax County is only responsible for maintaining 11 miles of roads in Fairfax County. The state maintains everything else. The community college system in Fairfax County is entirely paid for by the state. Montgomery County pays hundreds of millions of dollars into the community college. So we have different supports from the state. And I'm not asking you to do any of that.
Okay. So I also just, took a quick look at some of the stuff. Apparently, a lot of the commercial property market in many parts of Montgomery County is failing. And I would say that I just look one building in Bethesda. I practice law. I go to Rockville a decent amount, actually, near Rockville, Bethesda. Very, very nice places, I think. They're very prominent places in the state. The Clark building, I'm sure you're familiar with the Clark Construction Tower. Curiously enough, Clark Construction left and they moved all of their jobs and they went to Tyson's in Fairfax. And the building just sold for 22% of its 2019 price. And all of the industry actors, AOBA, NAOP, all of the organizations, commercial realtors, they're all saying, look, you have a tremendous crisis in your commercial real estate market there. You're just going to have a complete collapse. And of course, when these things happen, you're going to have less taxes because the assessments would hopefully reset. I mean, something that sold in 2019 for over $100 million and sold in 2024 for $30 million, you're going to reset the assessment. And so my question is, I know that we all want to tax things more. We want to build more, buy more, tax more. But do you think that you'll have a countervailing effect if vacancy rates increase, if people stop investing in building new buildings in your community because the rate on return is not there? If they look at these other factors, do you not have any concerns about that?
I'll be blunt. I don't.
Okay.
I get to look at Fairfax County all the time. They've put all these
Me too. I
taxes.
went to college.
They
Send my
put
daughter.
they put these taxes in place. After they put the taxes in place, they were able to make the transportation investments that allowed them to bring major employers to Fairfax County. They could tell somebody that if you see this project in my master plan, we will build it by date certain, because they knew they could create a revenue stream that would provide the infrastructure. In Montgomery County, if you ask JLL what they would tell a client, if they would say, could Montgomery County get this done in 2 years? The answer would be, we have no idea when Montgomery County could get it done because Montgomery County has no stream of revenue. I will go back to what I said before. Fairfax, if Clark goes to Fairfax, they're paying $1.50 in property taxes. They're paying $1.04 in Montgomery County. So they didn't expect to leave us to go to the cheap date. They went to the expensive date. And Fairfax County's already announced they're looking at a 4% tax increase this year. And they have a higher vacancy rate than we do. So I'm just saying, we need to look at, when we spend money, we need to treat it like an investment. If I was suggesting I was going to take this into my general fund and nobody would know what I would do with it, I could get the trepidation. A lot of residents have problems with that kind of general funding. But if in the case of us or the other counties, we're looking at schools where everybody's struggling, and you're looking at transportation where we're all struggling. It attacks real needs that all of us are experiencing.
Well, my final question, I guess, is my concern is this. So the Transportation Trust Fund has a $3.3 billion hole statewide. But a project that's predominantly in your county and Prince George's County, one project, the Purple Line, is $4 billion in a cost overrun. Not $4 billion of cost, $4 billion of cost overrun. So the entire Transportation Trust Fund shortfall logically can be attributed to we're $4 billion over on one project in your county. So when you tell me, sir, that we don't get resources for our transportation, most of the rest of the state would die to get those kind of billions of dollars in transportation investments that have been made in the DC metro area. And rightfully so. You're the largest county in the state. You're an economic driver, but you're getting billions and billions and billions of dollars in state tax dollars to finance your transportation. And that's our concern with the issue. But I appreciate your
perspective. But I'm trying to stay
always.
away from your tax dollars. I mean, if we're able to do this, we're no longer looking at the state funding as the sole source of being able to do anything.
Okay.
This is a break for all of you. It's think of it as cost sharing.
Okay.
But I will say the county did not make the contract with the Purple Line contractor, and we had nothing to do with the research that went into the contract. So talk to the people who are running the state then.
All right, thank you.
And Delegate, if I may, I do want to note, this is enabling. So all of the concerns you just addressed, they can all be handled at the local level through a public process, a public hearing. You'll also notice that the Maryland Chamber of Commerce has no position on this bill. And one of their priorities is to find transportation revenue. We constantly hear from the business community. In order for us to grow and bring jobs, we need good schools and we need fixes to the transportation issues in Maryland. Those are the two things this bill seeks to address. So we do believe this is going to generate economic development.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is kind of along the same lines as Delegate Buckles. So I was doing a little research, and are you familiar with a report that was done by RCLCO about this very topic and about the kind of siege that a lot of business owners and commercial owners feel like they're under in Montgomery County?
I'm aware of what they're worried about, but the same pressures the business, particularly commercial owners, are under everywhere.
Okay, so
But
there
doesn't mean you stop building things that are investments that might actually help them attract businesses and grow.
So they're besieged by rising office vacancy rates, depressed leasing activity, and weak sales. This group of office building owners had a commission report showing a pending drop in property tax collections, and they're requesting county assistance in predicting budget headaches if they don't. They're saying the vacancy rate has risen from 13.1% to 17.7% in 2019. That there's a lot of office market research, you know, as far as COVID, people are really rethinking the way that they do offices and how they run their businesses. And is there's not much concern for that you seem to be expressing to Delegate Buckle. And so I was just wondering if you had read the report and heard from anyone, you know, about this, and see if there was any, you think this will help their situation?
The whole point of this, if we'd done this 10 years ago when we should have done it, we would have been a much more competitive place with Northern Virginia than we are today. So if they want to attract people, I mean, think about the people we lost. We lost Discovery in New York. It has far higher taxes than us. We lose, people point out, we lose companies to Virginia that has far higher taxes. I've just told you that Fairfax and Tyson's is up to $1.50. So it's not like the tax rate is what kills people. It's the lack of investment, the inability to move goods and people, whether it's residents in and out or job seekers in and out. Those are the things that stymie economic growth. And we're trying to address it. And without the funds, like we've had BRT on the books for almost 12 years. We don't have a single inch of real BRT in Montgomery County because nobody's been able to figure out how to finance it.
All right, I'm just.
And if I could, I would just note that at the Maryland Association of Counties, these conversations took place. They always do. There are more Republicans than Democrats, and more Republican counties than Democratic counties. And the consensus was that allowing us the authority to make these decisions at the local level was the right thing to do. That we constantly struggle with these questions that you're raising about impacts on businesses, impacts on the economy, impacts on taxpayers, impacts on low income, high income, all of that. And we are set up at the local level to wrestle with those issues, but we can't even talk about it right now because we don't have the authority.
Okay, I thank you for your perspective. Delegate Hornberger.
Madam Chair. So I want to talk about the taxes going the other way. So I didn't see a floor set forth in the bill. So my question to you is, I'm a rural county and maybe I have 3 commissioners or, 5 in some cases. And, there's a company that's located in my county. There's no other companies like it. And I really like them and I want to zero out their taxes. Would I be able to do that with passage of this bill?
For one company?
Yep.
So they would be the only one in the subclass?
Yep.
I suppose, but we're open to, we don't want to do that for what it's worth. So we're open to putting some kind of a floor. I mean, right now you could do that.
The bill is written.
I mean, municipalities could do that right now. That's already in current law. And that's not happening, right? I don't know if that's happening. I haven't seen it.
Can counties do that?
We cannot. We don't have the authority to set separate rates.
Okay, so I'll pose my question. There's no floor as written in the bill. And if the bill passes, there's nothing stopping a county from picking an industry, or maybe it's 3 or 4, maybe it's manufacturing, I don't know, and zeroing out the taxes for that particular business.
Very much open to talking about that, and I think that would be considered to be a friendly amendment to clarify or set a floor to make sure that that doesn't happen. But again, it's not like that's a new concept. The municipalities have that authority already in current law.
Yeah, I know. I'm talking about the counties. Okay. Thank
There,
you.
there are a couple of taxes in Montgomery County that we've actually waived for certain developments. We don't waive the whole tax bill.
Correct.
But
And
we've-
and those are generally temporary or to incentivize a business coming in and on the front end.
Right.
They're not permanent.
And if I can just underscore the earlier point that was just made, which is that municipalities currently have this authority to drop the property tax rate to nothing if they wanted
correct.
to.
Yep.
And I think that you would find that most government officials locally would be held accountable to that decision should they choose to do that through their elections. And so I don't
No, I
see
mean,
an
we-
appetite for folks to do that.
We, this, I would didn't have anything to do with this, but that's basically what we did for Great Wolf Lodge in Perryville. Incentivize them to come. But I just, I don't want to see this passage of this bill being used in the wrong way.
Neither do we, absolutely not.
Thank you.
Delegate Wims.
Chair, thank you. I am a sixth generation Marylander, and first of all, Delegate Fair, thanks for bringing the bill. And I've heard over and over and over again how great Virginia is in Northern Virginia. So I wanted to ask you for Frederick County and our county executive for Montgomery, please tell us in plain English, what, if this bill passed, how would it help us to be competitive with Virginia?
Look, I can match Virginia on schools, parks, recreation, a whole bunch of things that we stack up really well on. And I would actually say on the internal road network, largely better than what sits in Fairfax. But I can't match them on any of the Northern Virginia counties is the ability to use mass transit to move large numbers of people to job centers and then back home again at night. We have the metro, but the metro wasn't built, frankly, to serve Montgomery County. It was built to serve the district. It was when, right after the 60s, when all the white flight and all the government jobs, the people who had those jobs went to the counties. It was basically designed to bring them back into downtown DC. It wasn't designed as an internal development tool. Virginia is developing their networks now as internal development tools focused on how do you move people to, say, the Potomac Yards or the other locations where they're targeting for economic development. They put a whole metro station at Potomac Yards. So we think that with this kind of tool, we can start providing targeted transit in the major corridors and make sure that our businesses can see that we can deliver the workforce they need there without having them totally stuck in traffic. And that's, I'll go back to what I said before. Virginia, I actually sat in meetings where we were told, you cannot compete because you do not have certainty. You cannot tell people when you're going to deliver something because you don't know how you're going to fund something. And that's a killer. I can't go for federal grants unless I show a match. I can show a match with the stream of bond money. I can't show a match with impact taxes because if each one of you was a different building in Bethesda, if Greg decides to build, I'll get an impact tax, a one-time payment, but I don't guarantee that I get any money from anybody else. If we had this kind of taxing structure, we'd create a stream of revenue that would let us go to the feds and say, we've got a stream, we can back up the bond. It really changes the way we work. And at the end of the day, for the developers, it's no more expensive than if they had to pay the impact tax on the front end, pay the increased cost of their project and the interest on it, which is all then passed through to the tenants at the back end. It's no more painful for the end user, but for us, it's a way of delivering the same or maybe a little bit more money, but doing it in a way that's less painful for everybody and lets us move forward on transportation.
So a small example that I could point to from the Maryland Department of Transportation traveled the state over the interim, sharing transportation projects. And one of their key stories was about Northern Virginia and their ability to put in a transit program. And forgive me, I don't remember the two exact cities, but it guaranteed transportation from city A to city B in 35 minutes. Their study showed that it took on average for commuting 1 hour and 15 to 1 hour and 20 minutes for an individual to travel from point A to point B using standard, single car, single use occupancy cars. And so they had this mass transit option had guaranteed a 35-minute travel time, and they are already seeing huge impacts because of that, lowering the number of cars on the road and increase the use of mass transit. What I feel like from Frederick County's perspective is We can't even look at options like that because of the current budgetary authority that the county has. But in addition to that problem that they're facing every day, we can't acknowledge the fact that Frederick County and other counties around us are growing at such a rate that they're actually putting pressure on other counties in the process. And so what is a crisis right now is going to be exacerbated in the next 20, 30, 40 years. And so really what I think the thing to take away here is that our counties, our local jurisdictions are coming to us and saying, let us be part of the solution. Let us help the state get to where we need to be, especially with our transportation initiatives and goals.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Delegate Henson. Oh, she hopped up. Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So how do you come out with that 0.125 cents per $100? Is there any comparable with other states or?
So that is what that's what Virginia did. So we wanted to put that into the bill and have a conversation. If that's not the right number, we're very open to looking at it, but we needed to put something in the bill. And I thought that was the best barometer to put in as a placeholder. And I think that helps counties. I feel like that would let us do what we needed to do and compete with states like Virginia. So that's where the number came from.
I see. I think the challenge for the committee, if we don't have any comparison, like different level with that number, and it's very difficult to figure out what's the right number there, right? Because each county has different.
So Virginia's number, the 12.5 cents is based on all commercial property, for example, in Fairfax County. They then go further with special taxing districts, like the Tyson Special Taxing District, Potomac Yards, Route 29, all of them have special taxing districts. And they have taxes there. The taxes in Tyson's Corner, you started at $1.09 today at 12.5 cents. By the time you add on their special districts tax, you're at $1.50 in Tyson's Corner. So whether 12.5 cents is the right number is probably low in sort of total needs. I think I can do a lot at 12.5 cents. And so I think we can make this work. But if I had that much more money, it's really substantial in terms of our bonding ability in the county.
And if I can say, the other approach would be not to have a limit, that right now we can raise our property tax as high as we want. Tomorrow we could double it by law. But we have put a limit on this just to make everybody comfortable that we're not going to do anything crazy.
I see. Another question about the transportation needs. I personally feel for Maryland, like 495, 95, many other major highways, a huge concern. People just have difficulty to travel around during normal hours. Like if we, for example, travel back forth between Northern Virginia and Maryland, if you didn't come out before 2:30, you just never get back. It's several hours on the road. So I'm wondering, like from Maryland, is there any effort to try to change that? I don't hear a lot about
But
it.
these are all state roads. So I mean, that was the former governor's misbegotten, misformed proposal. But the intent wasn't bad. The proposal wasn't great. Governor Moore said he was going to start at the American Legion Bridge, which is the primary bottleneck, and try to work backward. We looked at 270 coming down from Frederick. You've got capacity to add a lane on much of 270 at a very minimal cost. You do need to take out the bridges, but it nowhere compares to what the governor proposed for an initial project. So we think there's capacity to be had relatively inexpensively up to a point. The bridge is going to be stunningly expensive, and we got to figure out what we do between the spur and the bridge. But we're not, obtuse to that. When I was the county executive, and I did tangle with the governor, but I kept saying, it's a good idea. Could you please work with us? Because we think we could actually figure out a solution. He wasn't interested in working with us. We have a different governor and a different cast of characters now. So I think we will wind up ultimately addressing it. But us being able to pay for some of our stuff certainly takes pressure off of the state trying to figure out how to pay for the American Legion Bridge.
And in terms of effort, I mean, we look around and we see a multi-billion-dollar hole in the Transportation Trust Fund right now without much of a plan to fix it. So like the county executive said, we're trying to take some of the pressure off the state. We're trying to come up with innovative solutions to address this because we can't rely on the state. It's obvious we can't do that. And we can't wait around and continue to lose economic development opportunities, which enable us to pay for the blueprint and all the things that we want to do. If we keep waiting around and doing nothing, we cannot wait for the state to fix the Transportation Trust Fund. I don't see it. So we need to be proactive and innovative, and this is why the bill is before you.
And I'll just piggyback on both of those comments, say from Frederick County's perspective, we've been promised for decades now that we would build out an expansion on Route 15 in order to help ease traffic congestion that exists in Frederick that sometimes can go hours. Your mention about commute home, it gets real after Clarksburg. And we end up waiting a good long time to get home. And so this opens up the opportunity for counties to be able to look at transit options holistically, get projects that we couldn't fathom of being able to afford with the current structure and the current financing authority that they have. We can now look at ways of easing the pressure and the tension and the number of cars on the road if we're able to give the counties this kind of enabling authority.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have some other folks. Thank you all very much. Now we'll call up the unfavorables. Aaron Greenfeld, Brian Analu, and Tom Ballantyne, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair. I believe Mr. Ballantyne is caught up in the Senate, so he will not be here. I'm Aaron Greenfield on behalf of the Maryland Multi-Housing Association, here in opposition to House Bill 919. You have our written testimony. Housing providers rely on rent as a sole income stream to fund the operations of the property, including mortgage, payments, interest, payroll, business licenses, repair and maintenance, on and on and on. And as my written testimony indicates, only 5 cents of every dollar of rent are returned to the housing provider, and a small portion of this actually ends up in the owner's pocket. We have a number of concerns with House Bill 919, particularly when it comes to the lack of affordable housing. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, Maryland has a dearth of 146,000 affordable housing units. And on top of that, mandates in the building energy performance standards will increase costs and make housing even less affordable. According to the Stephen Winter Associates Building Energy Performance Standard Development Montgomery County report, compliance with BEPS, as we call it, will range from 42,000 to 60,000 per unit, depending on square footage. These are just costs that housing providers and residents simply cannot absorb. Assessing another tax on multifamily properties, which this bill opens up that window to do, will further exacerbate the financial viability of housing providers and residents and make housing even less affordable. Now is not the time to expose this industry to another tax. And for those reasons, we respectfully request an unfavorable report on House Bill 919.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Brian Anley with the Apartment Office Building Association of Metropolitan Washington. Our members own and operate a collective portfolio of some 23 million square feet of commercial office space and approximately 133,000 apartment units in Montgomery and Prince George's County. We recognize the desire to raise more funds to fund transportation, but now is not the time to be raising taxes and increasing financial burdens for the already struggling commercial properties. The challenges facing our industries have been well documented, as you heard, on the multifamily side with complying with state legislative mandates. But on the office side, occupancy rates have peaked around 50% of their pre-pandemic levels. Combined with high interest rates and changing demands for commercial office space, this has created a very challenging environment for commercial financing. Delinquency rates for commercial office loans are approaching 7-year highs, and office building owners are increasingly turning to deed in lieu of foreclosure to surrender properties rather than face foreclosure. All other office building owners, including some of our own, are essentially doing short sales. We have an example in my written testimony of a property owner that took about $100 million loss on a property in Bethesda. That's after they spent tens of millions of dollars on renovations to keep that property competitive. And that's not a one-off. That's happening all across our region, but particularly in the Maryland suburbs. On the multifamily side, again, you heard about the cost of complying with legislative mandates. There are others like fire safety mandates that our members are having to comply with. But the one statistic I'll leave you with is that on average, multifamily owners are only making about 5% return on their investment. That's half the historical rate of return of the stock market. And it's increasingly being squeezed by all the challenges that we just mentioned, as well as rent control in Montgomery and Prince George's counties. So for those reasons, we urge an unfavorable report on House Bill 919. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions, Delegate Griffith?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for testifying today. I appreciate it. So some of the testimony for this bill was about competitiveness with our surrounding states, particularly Montgomery County with Virginia and Fairfax County. And I know that's a bit of a battle going on across the Potomac. I guess my question is, and additionally, one of the big initiatives by the Moore administration is increasing housing stock, affordable housing, things of that nature. I know in Harford County, we have almost no development going on right now. And a lot of counties, we have a big issue with that. So in a sense, you know, trying to pass a bill to make Maryland more competitive with infrastructure, transportation, at the same time, defeating the purpose by making housing less affordable and driving folks like you out of state. Can you speak to that a little bit about, you know, between regulation and these taxes, would it be more attractive for you than start exploring places like Virginia and Pennsylvania and so forth?
Well, it's a great question. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's a great question, Delegate. And, you know, the term that the industry often uses is flyover country. And so what you're hearing a lot, particularly in jurisdictions where there's rent control now in Maryland, Prince George's and Montgomery County, where these costs that House Bill 919 creates could not be absorbed. Maryland's becoming a flyover country, and folks are going to the Carolinas, they're going to Florida, they're going to Georgia to develop. So we're losing right now because based on fees. The other thing I would mention is, as my colleague mentioned, is there are a number of mandates that currently exist that squeeze us, as well as those that are being deliberated this session. The governor's got a couple bills, the administration's got a couple bills that actually increase our fees 100%, make certain filing fees unrecoverable. That's going to increase costs. That's going to increase housing. And so these are real concerns. And so when you layer that over with a House Bill 919, we have significant, heart palpitations about how we remain competitive. And really we do want to try and address the lack of affordable housing. We need to do that. And all of these policies are sort of deleterious.
Thank you.
And if I could just add
Sure.
very quickly, another term you might hear is that investors are blind to where they are investing in. They're just looking for the highest rate of return. And as I said, that's already being squeezed by a lot of the things that we've discussed today. And just the general anti-competitiveness of Maryland and local jurisdictions with jurisdictions across the river. And the point that I would make on how our rates compare to other places is that you have to really take a high level view of where we are in terms of development, in terms of these kinds of exactions from our real estate community. And while Virginia may have special taxing districts where they're able to extract additional funds, they also have low or no development impact taxes. And Montgomery and Prince George's have very high development impact taxes. So you really have to take a complete view of the impact that we're discussing here today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 919, House Bill 1306, Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Wilkins, and esteemed members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Chris Fair presenting House Bill 1306. Continuing our theme of local authority, I am bringing forward a bill that would enable our local municipalities to look at alternative ways of increasing their revenues through the admission and amusement rates for food and drink. The intention of this narrowly tailored legislation is to provide municipalities a small but meaningful tool to use at their discretion. Should the city choose to enact this rate increase, it will target non-essential consumption with carve-outs for off-site consumption, grocery stores, and others. After discussion with advocates and acknowledgement that many low-income families utilize motion picture theaters as a critical low-cost social activity, I am happy to report that you should have an amendment in your inbox exempting motion picture theaters from this bill. Municipalities are under increasing pressure to provide infrastructure and economic development to keep their areas competitive. This bill acknowledges the real impact that visitors have on our local municipalities and seeks to provide a source of revenue for those municipalities to use to address those concerns. I ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1306 and look forward to hearing the testimony of our expert panel we have here today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is John Carroll. I am the mayor of the town of Galena, a small town on the Upper Eastern Shore in Kent County. I also proudly serve as the president of the board of directors for the Maryland Municipal League. Our league represents 160 local governments here in Maryland, with our smallest member, Port Tobacco Village in Charles County, and our largest member, Baltimore City. We represent over 2 million Marylanders who call a municipality home here in Maryland. As president, my mission has been engagement of our members and traveling across the state. I have visited over 120 municipalities since last July, and our leadership continues to hear the same message over and over again. Whether it's in urban, suburban, or rural areas, we all feel boxed in with our lack of expansion of our revenue sources. Basically, at the end of the day, as a mayor, I have property taxes. That's about it, especially for a small community. In December, our league hosted an inaugural State of the Municipality and released a commission study on the economic impact of municipalities. The study recognizes municipalities being uniquely positioned as the economic engines for Maryland to succeed. Maryland's cities, towns, and villages are where the heart of our communities are, and where you'll find neighbors gathering to support our local businesses, our recreation, and our culture. And while some of these are our best attributes of our cities, it also leads to the increased costs for our municipalities. The costs include our roads, parking, creating parking areas, our aging infrastructure, and not to mention just the ability to create access to clean drinking water and wastewater services. All of these things our businesses are creating the additional impact on our communities for, but our residents are the ones that are actually paying for it at the end of the day. So with this enabling legislation, I would ask for a favorable opinion for allowing a report on House Bill 1306. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair and distinguished committee members. I just want to build on the testimony of my colleague, Mayor Carroll. I am Takesha James. I'm mayor of the town of Bladensburg in Prince George's County. I did submit written testimony, but for the sake of time, just want to build on what we just heard. I have the privilege of serving on the Maryland 250 Commission, and the legislation that we're presenting today is so timely because as a member of that commission, we're going to be calling on your communities across the state to encourage you to celebrate the upcoming 250th celebration of our great nation. And as Mayor Carroll said, that is going to have significant impact as we try to celebrate our great history. Visitors are coming to our towns and your communities. Visitors are going to traverse your roads. They will be eating at restaurants. And as a small town, slightly bigger than Galena, with about 10,000 residents, there's a direct impact that the residents of Bladensburg will have to bear. And we simply can't afford that. And so this would just help us to really address some of the budget shortfalls that we've experienced post-pandemic, which is not uncommon for other communities across the state. Again, I have submitted written testimony, but ask for a favorable support for this bill. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Teresa Kuhn, CEO for Maryland Municipal League. I just want to hit a few points and I'll hand it over to Kevin. HB 1306 is one of our 3 MML priorities this session. It intentionally focuses on non-essential revenue raising with the goal of balancing how to raise a much needed revenue for our municipalities with a need of local government and its residents. There is no state fiscal note. And rather than asking the state to share a portion of the sales tax or create a local sales tax structure, which 38 other states have in place already, HB 1306 allows local governments to utilize an existing revenue structure without interfering with the state's ability to reserve sales tax for its own priorities. Over the last 15 years, the state's budget continues to provide a smaller impact to our municipal budgets. A total of 6% in the last DLS report, which is a majority of highway user revenue funds. And as we know here in this room, the history of that and the current situation, that continues to fluctuate. The only meaningful method to raise operational revenue to provide essential services to 2 million Marylanders is property taxes. Raising property taxes and exacerbating an already very real housing affordability crisis in the state of Maryland is not the answer. Yet it's the only solution that cities have available to them. This is a regressive tool, as we've heard from former County Executive Pittman. It overburdens our lower income residents and our fixed income seniors in particular. Talking points and data don't really paint the picture, and I'd like to share one real example with you before my time is up. One of our coastal member municipalities has 2,800 residents. However, from Memorial Day to Labor Day, they see an influx of up to 175,000 visitors in 3 months. Road maintenance, infrastructure, public safety, emergency services, the impact to our communities are real, and we urge a favorable report today. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Kevin Canale here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties. Again, in very strong support of the bill. Happy to be up here with our municipal friends. I'll just say, thinking back to the beginning of today, the good chairman from across the hall talked about we need to raise revenue. The time is now, and he's presenting options for this committee. I'll say the same thing for local governments. The time is now. I talked about a county that's going to have to raise property taxes by 10 cents. That's not something we can kick down the road. We don't have the same levers as the state to raise revenue. So again, with limited flexibility here with local revenues, we can maintain our commitment to the blueprint. We can invest in equitable transportation solutions, including transit and other modes, but also we don't have to rob Peter to pay Paul, taking money out of another pot for housing or public safety or public health or all the other things we do every day. We're asking you to please not make us do that anymore because the buckets are out. They're gone. There's nothing else in those buckets to pull from anymore for what we need to pay for. So we're just asking you, I think local governments have presented 3 or 4 bills for your consideration this year. We're asking to please, please, please give us some flexibility. The buckets are empty. There's no more money. We need flexibility. We need flexibility. Please ask for a favorable report.
Is Nina Themelis here? No, okay. Okay, then we'll move to questions. Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate, the theme of the day. We need more revenue. I do want to point out, I came here 10 years ago. It seems like 7 lifetimes. But 10 years ago, our state budget was $38 billion, and now it's $36 billion. Now it's $63 billion. So when we keep saying we need more, we need more, we need more, we need more, we need to be honest. We have spent billions and billions and billions of dollars. Maybe we should talk about some spending, but that's an aside. My question about the A&A tax. So as the fiscal note points out, typically the A&A tax is just passed on to the consumer. So I go and buy a ticket to a concert, and the person who's putting the concert on says it's a $50 ticket. But we apply the A&A tax, it's $57 and whatever cents. I just pay that. They don't take that out of their cut. Mm-hmm. And so what will happen here almost completely is that if you go and you purchase food and beverage, the type of things contemplated in the bill within a municipality that enacts this, is your consumer's costs will go up 2%. So for alcohol, if you went into, let's say that the city of Frostburg, city of Cumberland, where I live, chooses to enact the 2% admissions and amusement tax, which I don't really understand because you don't pay admissions and amusement tax to go to a Ruby Tuesdays, but we're going to call it that. And so I go to the Ruby Tuesdays and I order a beer, and in the state of Maryland, it's 9%. If Chairman Barnes has his way, it's 10% for the tax on that. And then I'm going to pay 2% more on top. So I'm really just increasing the de facto sales tax on my purchase by an additional 2%. Is that fair to say? Mm-hmm. Okay. So why wouldn't we just call it a sales tax then and say cities have the ability to raise a particular sales tax on the sale of certain goods within their jurisdiction?
From a county government perspective, I don't care what you call it.
Yeah.
I think that it does the same thing. I think that this bill came from trying to rethink A&A, and there were other options on the table. We settled on this one. So I understand your point. And I think, again, let's call it what it is. It is a tool to raise revenue. And you're right, the state has spent a lot more money since you've been here, and they've also made counties spend a lot more money.
Yes.
We didn't ask for all these costs.
I
But we're
agree.
trying to find ways to pay for them.
I feel your pain when it comes to the blueprint and all of these other issues, but when people go and they pay taxes out of their pocket, at least normal people, I think, they don't think to themselves like, well, this went to the federal government and this went to the state government and that went to this revenue thing and this went to the county and that went to the city. They sit there and they go, at the end of the year, I made $100,000 and I only got to really spend about $50,000 of it or $60,000 on my family, on my kids, on my savings, on my future. The rest of it all just went to this giant Leviathan that we call government, which is important. Government's important. I'm not saying we don't need government, but I did want to make that clear. Like the A&A tax, you said, Mr. Connolly, you just landed on that. Do you think that restaurants and things will have difficulty in administering that? Because they don't pay A&A taxes. So the A&A tax, if I recall, that goes to it gets remitted periodically to the comptroller, and then the comptroller sends it back to the counties or things once a year, which is different than a sales tax, which you might actually get your money if you just did it as a sales tax right at the point of sale. Would that make more sense?
I think we're open to that for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
One, dare I say, I agree with Buckle that admission and amusement is a little confusing. I mean, say amusement to me, I'm thinking like Hershey Park, Six Flags. Yeah. Two, I think Delegate Buckle needs to rethink his restaurant choices. Delegate Griffith, who's going to Ruby Tuesday?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, Mr. Connolly, you were one please away from me not asking a question. So you got 5 and needed 6. No, so I guess my concern about the bill is, 2% tax on luxury entertainment, things of that nature. But my concern is the equity piece, right? Because for me, even though I do well now, it's not too far in this in the past where I was, scraping together quarters to put a gallon in my gas tank.
Yeah.
And I think low-income people should also have access to some level of entertainment. Obviously not going to go on vacations, but, going to a bowling alley, going to an Ironbirds game is their big outing. And to Delegate Buckle's point, all these little taxes, we continue to pile on and pile on. And 2% tax in a bubble isn't that big of a deal. But when you start stacking these things to where we are, and this isn't 2% tax of 2019 prices, this is 2% tax of 2024 prices, which is very, very different. So can you speak to how this may impact low-income folks trying to access basic local community entertainment?
So if I can just, for the sake of the bowling example, bowlings would not be applied here at all anyways. Just if they were to buy food and drink in the bowling alley, then it would be applied. The goal, really the goal at the end of the day of this legislation is, you are correct, low income.
But who wants to go bowling sober? Yeah.
So I would say that the goal of this legislation really kind of looks at the reality on the ground of how people choose to spend their excess dollars that they have. And it looks at, that's why we're saying 2% and not, hey, why don't we just go up to the sales tax rate, as Delegate Buckle pointed to, and say, hey, why don't we just give cities the right to go up to 6%? Because this isn't a sales tax. I appreciated Kevin's explanation, but with one slight nuance, there is a big difference between the sales tax and what we're talking about here today, which is sales tax applies to a far greater quantity of goods than the A&A tax, this specific rate that we're talking about. It's important that we acknowledge that what we're looking at is for non-critical needs of individuals. We're trying to look at how folks are spending their dollars when they are coming into a municipality, especially. I think that's where the onus of the bill really comes from, is the fact that these municipalities are, forced to deal with the infrastructure challenges of wanting to have these economic development drivers, but then those folks are coming into their towns, putting huge amounts of pressure on their systems and then leaving. And that kind of leaves the onus and the burden on the folks that are living in that town to kind of try to make up the difference. And instead of putting in a regressive tax at the municipal level where they say, okay, we're just going to charge all the property owners more taxes to pay for that, they're trying to figure out a way to a nice soft balance of where folks who travel into towns can then pay. And I'll just speak for myself here from Frederick. You know, we have an annual festival that we run every June where we see 40,000 people come into our municipality of 80,000 people. And we see that suddenly a huge impact on our system, that all those folks, they leave right after the event's over. And that's just in one day.
And if I can add to that, I think, unfortunately, Delegate Hornberger's out of the room. I think Great Wolf Lodge is a great example. So Perryville is one of our municipalities. I know there was a ton of tax credits given by the county and the city to make it happen. They aren't earning a dollar back for all those visitors coming in, all the water that they require for Great Wolf Lodge. You saw the big spill they had over the Christmas holiday. There's a lot of efforts going into that. And that city is not seeing return. There is no dollar return on that. And that's a concern. So if visitors are coming in, which they are off 95 from New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, or Delaware and outside the state, the 2% is a small piece of that. And that is the restaurant inside of a Dunkin' Donuts or whatever it is. I think it's a great opportunity. And to Delegate Buckles' point, we have spoken with the comptroller. They've had no objections, and they actually have a system in place to pass this back through and a charge that municipalities would pay to cover that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I don't see any further questions. Thank you all very much. For the unfavorables, next we have Jack Milani, Doug Murdoch, Melvin Thompson, and Nick Manis.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Jack Milani, Maryland State Licensed Beverage. I think the folks to my right are going to say a lot of things. I'm going to give everybody a reality check because I'm kind of disturbed that there could be a tax targeted at the restaurants. I have a pub over in Woodlawn called Monahan's Pub. Been there 34 years. My partner and I, all our kids are grown up through college, so we don't have a lot of stress anymore. But Governor O'Malley comes in. He's the new commissioner. He told me yesterday, he goes, we might bring back our employees 2 days a week. So out of the 19,000 federal employees, I might get some of them back 2 times a week. And I'm ecstatic. That's how bad the industry's been with the work at home. And people say this is optional. Yeah, it's optional. People are going to say another reason not to support the local restaurants. You guys got to look at this. And I hate to be this personal, but it adds up. People just, you're giving them a reason not to come to a restaurant. Another reason. I think that I would rather see bills that encourage people to come to our businesses. I don't understand it. Maybe I've just been coming down here too many years, but I'm lost. I don't fully understand it anymore. You're picking an industry that was decimated and is still on their knees. And then they're going to propose a tax like that. I mean, and it's a meals tax, I guess is what it is. I don't know how this has to do with admission and amusement. Maybe I can have my wait staff tell jokes or something and make it admission and amusement, but it's really just a meals tax. So consider that when you look at this. And look, I fully understand the need for revenue, but maybe we need it to be broader and not targeted to certain industries that are already struggling. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman. Nick Manis with the Maryland Beer Wholesalers Association. We were just up here a couple of minutes ago opposing the increase in sales tax. You just heard that you could call this an increase in sales tax too, and we were talking about competition outside the state. Now we're talking about competition within our own state. I think I heard 160 municipalities all having possible different tax rates for alcohol beverages. And you have, you know, competing a city against city for where someone might go and choose to eat. As Jack said, the industry, especially the alcohol industry, has been flat and continues to be flat. And we just think that an additional tax, as we talked about before on the sales tax, and don't forget, we have the excise tax on top of this too. So you're talking about excise tax, 2% admission and amusement tax, and then the 9% sales tax. All that adds up, and we ask for an unfavorable report on this bill.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I am Doug Murdoch, Executive Director for Mid-Atlantic NATO, a regional affiliate of the National Association of Theater Owners. I did submit testimony, but in light of Delegate Fair's amending language, I will just be here to answer questions. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm Melvin Thompson. I represent the Restaurant Association of Maryland, and we're strongly opposed to this legislation for all the reasons that you've heard. This bill, although it is a gross receipts tax, it does single out the food service industry, and eating is not discretionary. This will be a tax that is passed on to consumers, and it will be regressive because it will hit those on limited or fixed incomes the hardest. Our industry has a very narrow profit margin. It cannot eat the cost of this tax. We will have to pass that on, and as a result, there will be fewer people dining out. This bill is not good for restaurants. It's not good for customers. It's not good for employees. We oppose the bill and request an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 1336. Just pivoting, folks, we're going to call House Bill 872, Delegate Kaiser. And you had Delegate Kaiser, Joanne Antoine is in favor. Do you want?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe she's sick, so she will not be joining me up here today, but hopefully you will see her written testimony from Common Cause. So thank you, Madam Chair Atterbury, Madam Vice Chair, and esteemed members of the Ways and Means Committee. It's my pleasure to come before you today on House Bill 872, election law, campaign materials, disclosure of use of synthetic material. The bill would regulate how we use synthetic materials in campaigns by requiring candidates to disclose the use of those images, audio recordings, video recordings of individuals that have been intentionally manipulated with artificial intelligence or other deceptive technology. I'm sure you're quite pleased to know that this is not a bill to increase the sales tax or amusement tax on anything. I also want to thank my co-sponsors, including the minority leader. I don't know if I've ever had a bill that's been an equal number of Democrats and Republicans. So a well-loved bill that I have here. And I'm also hoping, and I know that some members have seen it, but I'm hoping everyone has seen the video that was shared by committee staff with all of you, demonstrating the love for my bill. So anyone who hasn't seen it yet, not to ruin the punchline, but for the people behind me, I do have President Trump and President Biden discussing their love for this legislation. So trying to make a point here. So synthetic media, including deepfake, and thank you, Madam Chair, who knew I would be sharing that with everyone. Synthetic media, including deepfakes, is becoming increasingly harder to discern from unaltered media. I think the one I sent was pretty obvious, but that was just a quick, easy job. Some states have already done things. Minnesota and Texas have banned certain synthetic media. Other states have opted for enhanced disclosure, and other states are considering similar legislation. And my bill is trying to mirror those efforts regarding disclosure. Right now in Maryland, there is no legislation of any sort banning the use of synthetic media in campaigns. But what we do have are regulations that are in place. And what this bill is primarily doing is codifying those regulations. Ultimately, it's really just clearly indicating the use that you have used synthetic media. And while current law also doesn't expressly prohibit AI, there are laws in place if someone fraudulently tries to manipulate someone's vote using AI. So there is something out there about a manipulation. You know, what my bill doesn't do, certainly one could expand the definition of synthetic material to also just be still shots of people. Also, my bill has limited punishment of misdemeanor, fine, and losing eligibility of running in a race. Again, that's for knowingly using this, not if someone prepares it for you. Certainly, could the enforcement piece be stronger? Certainly, you could consider maybe referring things to the Office of the Special Prosecutor. I do believe it's a little premature to go much further. And some might also suggest, well, shouldn't we just ban this stuff? And I think the challenge is that it's not only would it be too hard, one could also argue that there would be First Amendment concerns. So I think we should all be cautious really with all of the AI legislation out there as we gain our foothold and understand it better over time. So in wrapping up, I have a few pages of notes here. My bill is really just trying to define things, get the ball rolling, require transparency. Ultimately, there's a distinction being made. We need disclosure if there's an image. We need disclosure if there's media. We need to disclosure if there's audio. So again, this bill would codify Maryland's election law definition of synthetic media and the regulations, and hopefully encourages the conscientious use of media in politics. Madam Chair, thank you. And to the committee, I urge a favorable report, House Bill 872.
Thank you. Questions, Madam Vice Chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to encourage the committee members, if they haven't already, to take a look at the video. It is a bit scary to see our former president and current president both saying that they support this bill by name. Maybe not look at it now because it includes sound. But when you can, my question is just if you have thoughts about how will we parse out, because it's a little bit obvious in your video that perhaps the former president and current president, maybe it's an enhanced video, but when it comes to campaign materials and lies and things like that, do you have thoughts on how we would be able to parse out and kind of determine that and be able to come to have the bill apply in those situations?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and Election Law Subcommittee Chair. I mean, I do think that's part of the challenge. So I think in the moment, that transparency piece, and it's that sense of if we have the law in place, many will be appropriate actors and put that out there. I think taking it to the next step, maybe in future years of, do we go look for it? Do we punish people greater? But for now, it's just the beginning stage of, if you're using it, let us know. And I do think that we're going to have that challenge in the business world and in so many other areas as well of what do we do further down the line, especially when they get better. This video is not that awesome, but still funny. But yeah, thank you.
Delegate Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Delegate, thank you for the bill. I think it's important subject matter. I do have some questions about the bill. On page 2, we reference still images and the need to have the disclaimer on the still images. My question is, would this apply, for instance, if I had a blemish on my face, or if I wanted to change my nose and make it different, would I thus then need to have to put this disclaimer on that image?
No, I mean, I believe we can all airbrush and get rid of the blemish and make ourselves thinner and make our hair less gray. I think all of that's appropriate when we do it for ourselves.
So you speak into intent, and so I want to just clarify that your focus of this bill is an intent to deceive. So if I'm just using it for my own campaign, and I use AI, type in, I want to have more rosy cheeks, right? Would that be covered? I just want to try to get a little bit more of a sense.
I don't think that would be covered, but certainly I would welcome the expertise of your committee to feel like if that were to, but I think it's in the case of where deception is intended. And I think we would all agree that us getting rid of maybe a gray hair or blemish is not the deception we're really worried about here.
No, absolutely. And I totally agree. And I understand your intent, but I'm bringing these questions because the language and then the interpretation in the courts may be different than what we talk about here. So making some legislative record. Lastly, when we talk about the audio recordings, so perhaps I don't do great recording. I stutter sometimes. I might not be able to get through a full recording. I may, employ one of these technologies to, 11 Labs to dub my voice. I type in what I wanted to say, and then it creates my voice as a robocall that I may then use. Again, no intent to deceive, but an intent to talk about a town hall or something like that. I mean, that's not quite campaign, but you get my drift. would you suggest that that might be part of the intent of this bill to capture that as well?
That would certainly be outside the scope, and I know that you've spent a lot of time on the AI issue yourself and are really excited by the opportunities and of course challenges that we have. Again, that would not be the intent, and so I think that too could be further defined. But then again, maybe we say that let me step back. I'll go with I don't, that isn't the intent, so I think we could, clarifying language could be in there to deal with that.
I appreciate the bill. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill. I think I share some concern with Delegate Young about the intent and the reality. So the reality, there are so many places people use like artificial intelligence algorithm, different algorithm. Any image processing, they will use different algorithm to process the picture, image, anything. So I think the intent is really focused on people try to deframe others. Is that the intent for this one, the bill? Use a like false created image, deframe others?
Well, let me, in answering your question, and I think I might be clarifying part of what Delegate Young is getting at. Again, there's current regulation in place now. Most of what this bill is doing is codifying those regulations. And the regulations say deep fake means an audio video recording that appears to constitute a true recording of an action, sound, vocalization, or an image. So we're just trying to put that same piece into law. So that intent is captured in somewhat in that definition, that someone is trying to put that out as if it were true. And that's the problem. But again, this is current regulation. This is in place now. This bill is just taking it just one step further, really, with the potential punishment, but the actual law pieces of what is allowed and not allowed is actually current practice in the state of Maryland.
Then for the audio part, why we set up like 2 minutes of the threshold there? What's the reason for that? Like is it for audio recording of 2 minutes duration or longer? So what's the background of that 2 minutes?
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I'm sorry. So any audio would have to share that, as now robocalls have to. It's saying that for a 2-minute one, it would have to be interspersed. As we do as legislators, in every law that we pass, we draw the line somewhere. So the thought is, in a shorter thing that's maybe just 30 seconds, you'll hear the ending, you'll hear the disclaimer, but in something that's much longer, you might miss the disclaimer. So just the suggestion of adding it in, change that to 1.5 minutes, change that to 1 minute. But it's just the idea of, given the length of time, that you have to intersperse it more than once.
I see. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 872, House Bill 916, Delegate Heinbach.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee, thank you for the opportunity to present House Bill 916 for your consideration this afternoon. For the record, I'm Jim Heinbaugh. I represent District 1A, which is all of Garrett County and the western part of Allegheny County. I submitted this bill at the request of the Garrett County Commissioners. It's a local bill. Garrett County currently has an 8% what they call an accommodations tax on vacation rentals of less than 30 days. This tax is collected and it's paid by the people that do the rent. It's paid on a monthly or quarterly basis to the county commissioners. This bill came about because we discovered a long time ago that some of the internet-based platforms like Airbnb, VRBO, Vacation, HomeAway, et cetera, weren't collecting and paying the accommodations tax to the county. The county attorney, tried many times to resolve this problem by contacting those organizations. he finally concluded, he got exhausted and concluded that the best way to address this was modifying the existing legislation to specifically say that internet-based rental platforms have to collect and pay the tax. The other thing the bill does is it makes some adjustments to the fines for being late or for not paying the tax. The county attorney is, as I said, he's confident that this will improve the county's ability to be able to bring the non-payers to the table. And again, this bill was requested by the county commissioners and it has the full support of the delegations. In closing, I respectfully request your support, favorable consideration of this bill, and thank you for your time and consideration.
We have questions. I just want to, first one, did you and the delegation have a heated discussion about this?
We had a very thorough, rousing, a little contentious at times, but we initially got together and came to a unanimous conclusion, Madam Chair. Thank you for asking.
Anyone have an actual question? I stole Buckles. I stole your question.
Ma'am, don't do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 916. Delegate Morgan, House Bill 1025.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I got down here early so I wouldn't be out of breath like I was the last time I testified. I have two bills in front of your committee, 955 and 1025, and there's some overlap. Do you want me to handle both of them at the same time? I think it would save some time.
Okay, we'll do 1025 and 955.
Okay, so let me start off with House Bill 955. This is a bill that the Ways and Means Committee has known well. What this does is cut and stops the automatic gas tax increase amidst soaring grocery store prices, and we're still feeling the effects of rampant inflation. The gas tax is set to go up again this July 1st. And if you look at the fiscal notes, set to go up by an estimated $30 million. Now, this nobody here has voted for this. It happens every year if we don't take action. Now, I am happy to say that last year when it was going up, there was some bipartisan compromise on that, or some bipartisan will to fix it. Last June 29th, Governor Westmore, in a Baltimore Sun article, said he wanted the legislature to address the Maryland gas tax. We've got to do better for working families. So with that, the governor didn't put any legislation in, but I've had this bill for a couple of years. I put it in. And like I said, if it's not passed, there's going to be a $30 million tax increase this July 1st. So I would say that's the end of the conclusion of HB 955, and we'll move on to 1025.
And let me just interrupt you and say, colleagues, please welcome from ENT delegates Addison, Guyton, and Morgan that are here joining us for this.
Hey, Dad.
The other Morgan.
So we're HB 955 left off, 1025 began. So everything that's in House Bill 955 is in House Bill 1025. But 1025 does a couple additional things that we think are really important. Because on past legislative hearings, we're always talking about money being cut from the Transportation Trust Fund. And as I mentioned on the previous bill, it's a $30 million tax increase, but that's a $30 million cut to the Transportation Trust Fund. So what 1025 does, it aims at doing a couple different things. After Governor made a mention that he wanted the automatic gas tax cut, the legislature set up a commission called the Train Commission for short. And in their first meeting, they floated the idea of a mileage tax. Well, a mileage tax is just, I would think it's a little bit creepy, actually. I don't even know how it would be implemented. To have a GPS mileage tax in the state of Maryland seems like it would be almost unconstitutional. And I see no practical way the government could ever implement a mileage tax because, so much of our state, people drive in other portions of the state. So it's not like they could just sit there and say, well, Your car had 55,000 miles on it last year, and now it has 60,000 miles on it, so we're going to tax you for 5,000 miles. Well, what happens if, half those miles were driven out of state? So it would have to be some type of GPS tax, and that just doesn't sit right with us. What 1025 does, it prohibits the state or local jurisdiction from imposing or levying a mileage tax. And then it also requires the MTA to make up the revenue that's lost by cutting the gas tax by going back to the historical standard of a 35% fare box recovery on MTA. And one reason why we did that, if you look at the fiscal note, this actually gains revenue into the Maryland Transportation Trust Fund. And that's really important because if you ever looked at the list of transportation projects that were cut this year, it's unbelievable. It equals billions of dollars. And it's in every one of our districts, and it affects roads and bridges. The 35% historical standard for MTA, that's how it was for years. And the interesting part, if you look at the fiscal note, page 3. Last week in the General Assembly, we pushed through a $237 million bill for the Washington Area Metro Center. WMATA. It says, and this doesn't even have that calculation in it. If you look, the fiscal note calls off the fare box recovery for Metro is 6%. That means that the rest of the state subsidizes the ridership at 94%. At some point, this is becoming unfair. It's unfair for every motorist in the state. We're trying to put together a solution that phases this in over a 5-year period to try to make up some of this revenue. So we're not having transportation projects cut. I'd be happy to answer any questions on either one of the bills.
Sarah Price was signed up to testify. Come on up on 9:55 in support. So I'm just gonna have her come up and then we'll do questions.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, honorable committee members. Sarah Price here from the Maryland Retailers Alliance. Very excited to be favorable on something in front of you this week. We all know that Marylanders are continuing to face high costs of living and higher costs of goods for the last several years. Allowing for the gas tax in Maryland to continually go up every year in conjunction with those higher costs of living, that does mean that the cost of goods will likely continue to go up as well, as it will increase the costs for getting those items into the state and into your stores. We feel that it would be highly appropriate to decouple the gas tax increases from the CPI as a way to try to address these cost increases for Marylanders and try to make it a little bit easier to get by here in the state. We would urge favorable, and if you want to pencil me in as favorable on 1025 in your notes, feel free to do that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now questions, Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm really glad, Delegate Morgan, you did the bills together because I think I just want to clarify the point that you made. So if we just unchain the gas tax from CPI, which I believe in 100%, but it does produce a negative fiscal effect unless we came back here every year and voted to continue raising the sales tax, we'd want to. But if we do that, and at the same time, all we ask is that people who actually use our mass transit systems, they have to actually pay a higher fare box recovery rate. Miraculously enough, the Transportation Trust Fund comes into the black, right?
Well, that's exactly right, Delegate. And I would say that it's not crazy. It's just it's the historical standard. That fare box recovery rate was always set at 35%. It was set at something higher than that, but we removed that requirement as recent as 2018. Yeah. And doing that, we put ourselves into this mess. And the people that are paying the price are commuters that drive. They're the ones getting the constant tax every year. They're the ones getting projects cut every year.
Yeah. And in fact, didn't we remove the requirement that the fares raised according to the CPI?
Yeah.
So there used to be a requirement that said the fares that you charge somebody to use the mass transit system, they had to go up in accordance with CPI the same way the gas tax did, but we struck that.
But we struck that, and this resulted in the price where the citizens that drive are subsidizing the citizens that ride Metro, MART train, mass transit at an insanely high percentage.
The fare box recovery rate for MTA appears to be lower than what we heard the other day in the floor debate. That they indicated from WMATA, which we don't really control WMATA, we contribute to it, but it's a tri-jurisdiction compact. So their fare box recovery rate was around 13%. The MTA's fare box recovery rate, at least from the data that can be provided to us, suggests that it's less than 10%. It's around 6 to 8, depending upon the modality.
Well, I'll call out page 3 of the fiscal note that says transit fare box recovery. Come down to the second paragraph. It says MTA, bus, light rail, heavy rail, which is subway, commuter rails. The fare box recovery is 7, 6, 8, and 8% respectively. And that's what's calls out. And then you look at this latest story that was in the Susquehanna Times. It talks about the commuter rail that goes from Baltimore to Charleston. And that one rail line, it's about 350 passengers on it. They signed a petition saying they don't want their fees going up. And they did a study, and it's marked off that the average salary of the people that take this trip is they make $150,000 a year. So motorists that make way less than $150,000 a year are subsidizing their adventure. And look, I just think it's a matter of equity and fairness that the people that use the service actually pay for the service.
At least 35%. Still be a huge.
It would still be subsidized per this bill that straightens out the Transportation Trust Fund to a degree. It would still be subsidized at 65%.
Thank you.
Delegate Hornberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the bills. Full disclosure, I'm co-sponsor, and I believe in what you're going to do here. Yep. So my question is, folks locate based on a number of attributes. Probably the biggest one is affordability. So homes are naturally cheaper as you get farther away from these city centers. So what folks end up doing if they want to raise a family or live on their own, et cetera, is that they end up buying a home that is farther away from their employment. And I know this because in Cecil County, over 50% of our residents commute out of the county for jobs. So if the bill passes, is it going to give, and I'm talking about the gas tax one, is it going to give more relief to low income or high income cohorts?
I couldn't tell you whether it was low income or high income. I could tell you that it only makes sense that low income people would have a harder time paying for an additional gas tax increase that is inevitable. It's going to happen. And it's estimated at $30 million for this year coming July 1st. So yes, you would be raising those people's taxes. And I'll tell you, you mentioned about people in rural areas. That's what was so concerning about the fairness of fixing the Transportation Trust Fund. The having mileage tax pushed on people that decide or forced to live in rural areas because of housing and housing concerns or the cost of housing, to sit there and tax them more, it's unconscionable.
Okay, and then also, how much fuel tax do electric vehicles pay?
Zero.
The roads they use. Zero. Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearings on House Bill 955 and 925. Delegate Taras, House Bill 1343.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members. For the record, Delegate Taras here on House Bill 1343. I don't generally use the word simple, but this is a really, really simple bill that is just trying to make sure that our petitions and ballot questions use simple language. So it's very simple, and we just want simple language that everyone understands. But for real, this is a bill that is intended for people like my parents who English is not their first language and they would never be able to understand things that Delegate Ebersol says with all his big words. This is to ensure that they can understand what they're reading, what they're selecting when they go to vote. And I believe the numbers show that the State Board of Elections 2022 data indicated that nearly 400,000 voters declined to answer important ballot questions, although they participated in that voting session. So with that, I ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. And can we have Morgan Drayton come up? She is favorable. And we'll see if there are any questions.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the committee. My name is Morgan Drayton on behalf of Common Cause Maryland, in support of House Bill 1443. Sorry, I have two that are
1343.
1343, my bad. Like the delegate said, we believe that this is just a common sense bill. We don't believe that anyone should ever, not vote on a question because they don't understand what they've been asked. And this is really important for, like we said, immigrants and just people who don't speak English as their first language. So we're in strong support of this bill and we would request a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1343, House Bill 1303. Delegate Grossman.
Right. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, friends on the Ways and Means Committee, for the record, I'm Delegate Brooke Grossman, and I'm going to follow Delegate Taras' lead and present a very simple bill. Bill 1303 would provide an increase in compensation to board elections members who dedicate their time, staff, and effort to the knowledge to ensuring that our elections operate smoothly. The bill simply stipulates that jurisdictions pay their BOE members the greater amount of either an annual salary already outlined by many counties in statute, or a per diem based upon canvassing for election date and recounts. That's it. That's the bill. It's pretty simple. It's $100 a day for canvassing, $350 for election day, and $100 a day for recounts. There are a couple of counties in the state that don't have a base salary set. This would just say either your base salary is this, or in counties where base salary exceeds what this amount is, you'd get paid your higher amount.
Okay, any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1303. House Bill 1356 is a Howard County bill. Delegate Wu.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and the Ways and Means Committee. I'm here to present the Howard County Delegation Bill HB 1356. This bill is pretty simple. So it's really ask candidates running for village board or Columbia Council in Village of Columbia reports donations and disbursement. So it's not hypothetical. Actually, it mainly happens in Columbia Association elections. Something happened a few years ago. A third party spent more than $100,000 on their campaign. So they didn't disclose that. I think that's a concern we hear, and we want to make sure for future elections, if there's a huge really amount of money spent on the election, there should be reporting requirement for that election. So this bill is really about transparency and helping make sure voters in our community in a village election will be able to make informed decisions when they vote on the election, if money, big money get involved. I remember when I was running for this, we don't spend money, we just knock voters, our residence doors, 100 doors be good enough. Now when other people are spending $100,000, that means something. So we want that transparency. And I'm asking for a favorable report.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1356, Delegate Fair, House Bill 951. And do you have one favorable that's virtual, and then someone signed up for information purposes. Nikki Tyree, yep.
Thank you. I'm sorry to everybody who has to see me for a third time today. My apologies. This bill, I truly don't even have any written testimony about. It is, again, on the line of simple bills. This is pretty high up there. For a bit way of background, I put this bill in last year. I actually withdrew it on the day of to provide testimony because we were going to work this out through regulation. I went and worked over the interim with MSDE to try to put this through regulation, and they informed me that this would take 4 to 5 years to do through regulation. And so they said the easiest way to handle this is just to put it in through legislation. So I am here today presenting House Bill 951, which simply seeks to put a voter registration link on each county Board of Education website. It is a way to encourage individuals to get out and vote. This issue was brought to me by a constituent in my district who commented that in their efforts to get voter registration across the board and to help engage young people, that we really should be looking at these opportunities to remind young people to get engaged and get pre-registered to vote, which is currently at 16 years. And if the Senate passes the bill that we passed last week in the House, will be 15 years and 9 months. It will just make sure that it informs them of that, and then it'll link them directly to the State Board of Education application page so that they can then quickly register to vote. And with that, I will turn it over to our favorable testimony. Or please, if you haven't.
Thank you, Madam Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins. For the record, Nikki Tyree from the League of Women Voters of Maryland. We really appreciate the spirit of this bill, but given the audience that it's directed to, we think that it would be better suited to, since it's going through legislation, to be put on the learning management portal. This will be easier to access by students as well as teachers.
Okay, do we have Richard Kaplowitz here? Okay, Mr. Kaplowitz, we're gonna give you a second. It seems like your audio is not connecting. Okay, well, I think we might have to miss his testimony. Okay, if it changes while we're still in hearings, then we can bring him up. Sure. I think it's, you know, it says you're connecting. So any questions? Delegate Miller.
Thank you. Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing the bill. My concern is twofold. Well, three. The bill says, you know how I love to read my bills, main page of the website. Yep. Okay. So main page of the website, you know, our Board of Ed websites are overloaded with information and critically important information as far as families and their accessing their education and things like that. So I'm not sure if main page, but then I'm also not sure if in the learning portal would also be, because then it wouldn't be publicly accessible as far as, you know, information about it. So it would feel from a parent perspective, or it could feel like other perspective, that it's being hidden, and you wouldn't want that. So you'd want transparency and everything too, but I'm not sure if main page is either, because it's hard enough for people to find the Board of Ed members who is accessing meetings and all of those publicly facing systems that we want them to be able to access. And then my other question is about verifying. It says that they're verifying that they're 16. How are they doing that? And then are you verifying that they're eligible to vote in the state of Maryland?
So utilizing the third-party system through the State Board of Elections, they would go through that verification process. To answer the second part of your question first, to answer your first part of the question about the main page, and forgive me if I missed one in the middle. I was trying to get a pen to jot down your questions as we went through. The main page question, I'm happy to chat with you offline about where we think I think that the intent, especially with the voter registration experts that are kind of trying to help engage young voters and get them to register to vote. I think the critical balance that we're trying to strike here is finding a spot where it is easily accessible and seeable by students, and at the same time, it's not overwhelming, adding to the overwhelming amount of information and content that are on certain pages of the website at the same time.
Okay, and I appreciate the intent. So thank you. Thank you for bringing it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. And that concludes the testimony on House Bill 951. Delegate
I
Fel-
had testimony, excuse me, I
Oh,
had testimony scheduled.
Okay. 1 second, please. Can you there you go. Okay, here you are. So we're still on House Bill 951. Sir, go right ahead.
Thank you. My name is Richard Kaplowitz. I live in District 3. I thank the committee for listening to me. Briefly, the intent of this bill is that only 25% of 16-year-olds and only 45% of 17-year-olds are getting a driver's license. We have a large ALICE population, not just in Frederick County, but around the state, asset limited, income constrained, employed, the working poor. They may not have a car available and the money for insurance to have a teenage driver. What we are trying to do is create the habit of voting among our younger people. It is an expansion of the franchise and should be not a problem for anyone to expand the franchise. I would note that a 16-year-old who is registered to vote can serve as an election judge even if they are ineligible to vote. A 17-year-old who will be 18 by the date of the general election is permitted to vote in the primary. There is an election for school boards this year. For 16 and 17-year-olds, that can be vitally important for their educational future. The idea is to provide for our student population an easy way of participating in the system. As for verification of their age and verification of whether or not they are eligible to vote, there are criminal penalties if you misrepresent yourself. If the verification age page that they go to states clearly that there are criminal penalties for misstating, I don't care how they prove they are 16, and I don't care if they prove whether or not they're eligible to vote. You are assuming that people will come into the system who know they are not eligible and will go ahead and register. I do not believe that voter fraud exists. We found 8 cases in the over 31 million votes in the state of Maryland. We have a solution in search of a problem.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 951. Delegate Feldmark, House Bill 1342.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, committee members. For the record, I'm Delegate Jessica Feldmark. I'm pleased to be presenting House Bill 1342 to you this afternoon. Ballot questions, as we recently discussed with Delegate Taras' bill, as you know, are a critical and fundamental piece of our democracy. When policy questions are so important, we go ahead and put them to the people to decide directly as voters. And even though they are so important and generally deal with very significant issues, we know that they are often unvoted and a source of confusion and uncertainty for voters. So House Bill 1342 would help provide better access to information on ballot questions. The questions themselves are drafted to describe another item, such as a proposed constitutional amendment, charter amendment, or enactment. So this bill would require that voters have easy access for at least 65 days before the election, not only to the ballot question, but also to the full text of that enactment or proposed language that the ballot question is drafted to describe. In addition, it also requires that the ballot question itself be drafted in plain language. So this will allow voters to better understand and be better informed by both simplifying the question itself on the ballot and providing the full detail of the actual item that voters are being asked to support or oppose. So I respectfully ask for your favorable report and welcome any questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon again, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the committee. Again, my name is Morgan Drayton with Common Cause Maryland, and we are in support of HB 1342. This bill is not meant to question the intelligence of Marylanders. It just takes into, it just acknowledges kind of the realities of the educational makeup of our state and country. It makes the necessary accommodations. So we believe that this extra time to think about what potential ballot measures are asking potential voters would give them time to think about how they want to answer the question so they don't get into the booth and because they don't know exactly what they're being asked, potentially choose not to answer a question or leave anything blank on their ballot. Overall, we think that this is a common sense measure to make voting more accessible to all Maryland voters, and so we would request a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins. Again, for the record, my name is Nikki Tyree, Executive Director for the League of Women Voters of Maryland. I think that at this point, we know that Maryland is a minority majority state, and we're very fortunate for that. It does leave some question of how accessible our ballot questions are given the language that's used. In 2024, we should not have hurdles and obstacles to get people to vote on the ballot. I think that, as Morgan was saying, even in a great state like Maryland, we do have educational hiccups. Not everybody has had the same access as many of us in this room have had. And as such, it leaves them in a situation in the voting booth of either having to leave it blank or worse, trying their best out of embarrassment to understand the question that's in front of them, and then voting in a way that if they actually had understood it, they would not choose to vote. In 2022, there were several questions up on the ballot that many of even League members had trouble understanding, and as far as to just ask us how they should vote because they did not understand, which is obviously a question we didn't answer. But so I think that given that this is a very needed bill, and we appreciate Delegate Feldman putting it in.
Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1342. House Bill 1088, Delegate Feldman, and who would you like to bring up?
My
Molly
panel
Woon.
can join me, please.
Molly Woon is virtual. And then you have you have two virtual folks.
Yes, I believe one of them may actually not be able to join us.
Okay.
But yes.
Okay.
Okay. Well, good afternoon once again, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and colleagues. For the record, I'm Delegate Jessica Feldmark, pleased to be presenting House Bill 1088. House Bill 1088 establishes procedures to upgrade our existing automatic voter registration, or AVR, process at the Motor Vehicle Administration and the Maryland Health Benefits Exchange. As you'll hear, this is a win-win policy for voter access, voter integrity, and government efficiency. Upgraded AVR will help us reach Marylanders who are eligible to vote but aren't registered, and Maryland voters who move within the state, making their voter registrations out of date. Data from other states shows that upgraded AVR systems are significantly more effective at getting voters registered and keeping those registrations up to date, helping to ensure cleaner voter rolls, smoother election administration, and a better experience for voters. Under the current AVR system, MVA, or the Health Benefits Exchange, customers are interrupted in the middle of their transaction and are asked a series of questions about voter registration. The upgraded system uses documents that customers already provided to the MVA or to the exchange to identify citizens who are clearly eligible to register to vote. Rather than interrupting the customer's primary transaction to ask a series of voter registration questions, The system forwards their information directly to election officials. Election officials then follow up with the customer through a mailed notice that provides information about voter registration, party affiliation, and how to decline to register to vote if they'd rather opt out. If the potential voter doesn't decline within 3 weeks, then they are added to the voter rolls. A similar streamlined process applies to already registered voters who have moved or changed their name so that their registration can be updated. Our democracy is at its strongest when everyone who is eligible to vote participates. Upgrading our AVR system will help move us closer to that goal. I look forward to your questions and respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 1088.
Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. My name is Alexander Tishenko, testifying on behalf of the Institute for Responsive Government Action. And my background is as an enforcement attorney at the United States Department of Justice Civil Rights Division in the voting section. As the delegate laid out, there's 3 main things that this bill will accomplish. It will get more eligible unregistered Marylanders registered to vote in the current AVR system, but only after carefully verifying their eligibility. And then data that we have from other states, including Colorado, shows that it's maybe twice as effective as the current system of getting unregistered voters registered. The second is that the bill is more effective at keeping current voters' information up to date, which in turn ensures cleaner and more accurate voter rolls. And again, data that we have from other states suggests that we're talking about hundreds of thousands of additional voter registration updates every year, which means correspondingly hundreds of thousands more updated voter registration records. Third, the bill will increase safeguards against non-citizen registration, ensuring the integrity of the voter rolls while simultaneously protecting non-citizens against a mistake that could have serious consequences for their future naturalization. The bill accomplishes these goals for a modest upfront investment and entails significant savings for both MVA, state board, and in particular local elections officials. Upgraded AVR has also been adopted in other closed primary states, including Oregon, Nevada, Delaware, and New Mexico, and actually provides more opportunities for voters to affiliate with a party than the current AVR system. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'm happy to take any questions the committee may have.
Thank you again, Madam Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins. Again, for the record, my name is Nikki Tyree, Executive Director for the League of Women Voters of Maryland. I won't reiterate too much of what Delegate Feldman and her panelists have said. I will just add that a couple of weeks back, this committee heard a bill on unaffiliated voters. The League fully supports this bill, except we would ask that any information sent to the individual after they've been registered does include a line about how they will have limited participation in the primary elections if they don't affiliate with a party, which this bill lays out exactly how they can go about doing that. Thank you.
Good afternoon again, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Morgan Drayton from Common Cause Maryland. I don't want to repeat what others have said. They've done a really good job of laying out why this bill is necessary. I do just want to say that studies show that this new system of automatic voter registration will bring new voters from diverse communities. Also stressing that, as others stated, there are safeguards that will ensure protection for non-Maryland citizens by screening them out of the voter registration questions and hopefully protect them from making any sort of costly immigration mistake. So we believe voting is the most essential form of political expression, and this legislation represents a small step forward in the fight to make voting easily accessible to all eligible Marylanders. So we would request a favorable report on HB 1088. Thank you.
You have Molly Woon. Can we bring her up? Yep. Ms. Woon, please go ahead for 2 minutes.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. For the record, my name is Molly Woon. I am the State Elections Director in Oregon in the Secretary of State's office. I've submitted written testimony. Chair Atterbury and Vice Chair Wilkins, I apologize for coming to you from my car. I got the timing wrong. But I wanted to just take a minute and talk to you about our experience here in Oregon. We were the first state in the nation to implement automatic voter registration. I worked on that team in 2015 and 2016. And the main thing I want to kind of get across is that it has become the norm here in Oregon, and it is something that has our voters now have come to expect. We registered about 140,000 people in the first year by doing a pullback and then starting the system moving forward. Since then, it's been over 7 years, which means everyone has gone through the process of replacing their license or ID. And now it is just the norm in Oregon for how voter registration is done. It has proven to be more convenient for not just the public, including public when they relocate, automatic registration updates happen, but also easier for our clerks because there's less paperwork, easier for our DMV, again, less paperwork, less things happening at the counter, and has made things easier for us in the elections division. We've created a proven system that works. We're really excited to see upgraded voter registration expand around the country, and hope you consider it as well. I am happy to take any questions you might have. I heard mention of closed primaries. We also have closed primaries in Oregon and have been able to create a system that works for the public. We're just really pleased to see more and more states following. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Madam Vice Chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, and this panel for bringing this bill. And I know that there have been significant changes made since last year. I just want to make sure I fully understand how it would work. So it sounds like this is more of an opt-out of registering to vote when someone interacts with the MVA or the Health Benefits Exchange. They receive a notification that unless they share that they would not like to be registered, that they will then be registered to vote. I wanted to better understand in terms of the party affiliation. How does the bill, we're having broader conversations around party affiliation here in the state and in the subcommittee. And I wanted to understand how people have the opportunity, a strong opportunity to register with a party if they choose, and know that at least at this current time, that if they don't register with a party, they'll have a limited ballot. So we don't create just a group of people who are just unaffiliated.
Sure. So under the bill, there would be several opportunities for a voter to affiliate with a party. So the first would be during the transaction itself. Then when they get the notice, which would give them the opportunity to opt out if they so desired, there would also be the opportunity to affiliate with a party at that point and return that postage prepaid. There would also be information about how they could go online to affiliate with a party as part of that notice. All voters, when they would have an opportunity to affiliate with a party in requesting a mail-in ballot. And also the bill does provide that specifically for voters who are registered through the upgraded AVR system, and if it's their first time going to vote since they were registered through the AVR system, they would be able to affiliate at the polls.
That's a special provision of this bill, that if you come in under this bill and you're registered under this bill, you have a special provision to affiliate with a party.
Right, just if it's the first time they're voting after the upgraded AVR.
Got it. Okay.
I may have a technical correction there. I'm not
Just
sure.
adding, it's the same opportunity that like a same day registrant would have to affiliate with the party on election day or during early voting. So we'd just be extending that in a limited way to folks who are getting registered for the first time through the system. The only other thing I would mention is that the vast majority of Marylanders are already registered to vote. The vast majority of MVA customers are already registered to vote. So as a practical matter, it's only affecting for sort of new registrants. It's a smaller fraction of those customers. Folks are already affiliated with the party who've already chosen not to, and they're just getting their address updated.
Right, and I do like that since they would have just had an interaction with one of these agencies, we theoretically have a good address for them to mail to about the notice.
Right.
When you said that they'd be able to affiliate with a party during the transaction, I just wanted to understand that better because I thought that the point of this bill is that they weren't really going to be asked or interact during the transaction, but that they would basically have the information forwarded to SBE and then receive a notice. So there is an interaction in the transaction where they're asked about voting and party.
So I may have misspoken, but I thought we still had that opportunity.
If I may, that's correct. So I think, the way that voter registration currently works at MVA is that you're basically directed to a customer facing device and you answer questions on the screen. And so the idea is under this bill, instead of having the full complement of voter registration questions, somebody would just be presented with an optional screen where they could affiliate with the party. So it sort of informs them about voter registration, that they should expect a mailing. And if they want to affiliate with a party on the spot, they're able to do so. This is the same concept that New Mexico is implementing in their upgraded AVR system.
So are we asking them if they want to register to vote and then what party? Are we asking? I'm confused as to if this is just an opt-out situation or if we are asking them, do they want to register to vote and then what party at the time of the transaction?
So I think the details of how the screen will be worded are left to implementation. But the basic idea is that they would be provided with a party affiliation opportunity, but it's not requiring them to take action to say, yes or no to voter registration. So again, as the concept's been floated in New Mexico, it's sort of informing them, based on information you've provided, the MVA, you'll be receiving information about voter registration in the coming weeks. If you'd like to select a party right now, you can press this button on the screen, but it doesn't require them to go through it. So they have the opportunity, one of, sort of 5 opportunities that will be presented, in person during the transaction.
Got it. And just one other question for Ms. Woon, and thank you so much for your time and for visiting us here in Maryland. I wanted to better understand. So since this is more of a opt-out, can you share more of your experience on what I'm a little bit concerned about? It's people in the busyness of life, just maybe not realizing that now you're registered and you can go vote, creating more. Sorry.
If you have, ma'am, if you have your, like a live stream on, can you turn that off? Because it's giving us feedback. Okay. It's just like we hear ourselves a second after we talk.
Oh, no.
We'll just give her a second to come back.
Is that working?
Yeah, we just don't see you anymore, but that's okay.
I just wanted to get a better sense of, in Oregon, how did you all structure the bill or structure your efforts on this so that you don't create a group of people who are perhaps unknowingly registered and not coming out to vote because they may not realize that they're now registered and able to vote? How did you deal with that?
Sure. That's a great question. Thank you. So Oregon is a completely vote by mail state. We have been for over 20 years. So it's probably a little bit different for us because if you're registered to vote, you're going to get a ballot. Certainly there are probably people that miss the notification. They've been automatically registered and might have questions about it. Usually it's a happy surprise. And one less thing for them to, have to deal with when election time approaches. A lot of times we encourage people, especially because we traditionally have closed primaries during primary season, to go online and check their registration, make sure they're registered, make sure that they have chosen the party they want to be affiliated with, if that's the case. And I think a lot of times people will, not a lot of times, but sometimes people will find out that they are registered when they didn't know that they already were. But for the most part, because we've been doing it for 8 years, folks are socialized to the idea that an interaction with DMV is going to mean automatic voter registration.
Delegate Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you for this bill. My concerns are people that come in to register. How do they differentiate between legal and illegal citizens as far as driver's license?
So this would simply be based on documentation that the MVA is already collecting. So under Real ID, MVA already has to collect verification of citizenship. So they have those documents used to establish that. And that information would be shared with the Board of Elections.
Right, well, I'm not real sure how the Real ID works for citizens or for people that are undocumented. My concern is, since this is an opt-out, they're already automatically enrolled in voting. What if these people aren't eligible to vote? How does that work? I mean, would that be basically causing, well, anyway.
So go ahead.
So to clarify, there's sort of two different license types in Maryland.
Right.
One is a non-federally compliant ID, which is something that you would apply for if you don't have proof of legal status.
Right.
So currently, those people are not asked about voter registration. They're not given a voter registration opportunity. Nothing changes under this bill. They would continue not to get a voter registration opportunity. If somebody comes into MVA and they present documents for their Real ID that prove that they are a U.S. citizen, so a U.S. birth certificate, naturalization paperwork, a passport, then they would be put into the upgraded AVR process. Conversely, if they present a document like, for example, a green card or like somebody with legal permanent residence would have, they're not asked about voter registration at all. They are not put into any sort of voter registration opportunity. So the system sort of sorts people depending on what documents they provide. So there's no real opportunity for someone who's ineligible based on their citizenship to be put into any sort of streamlined voter registration opportunity at all. So it's more protected than the current system.
Right, well, I guess my question, if I might, Madam Chair, if let's just say, for instance, undocumented person comes into the MVA, they've lost their license. Now they want to take and get a new license because they've lost them for whatever reason. They go in, will they be automatically asked, and what kind of safeguards we have there? Because I'm just curious.
If somebody's undocumented, that would mean that they can't prove their legal presence. And so they would be applying for a non-federally compliant ID and they would not be asked about voter registration at all, which is the current practice.
So basically there's a system in place that if they're not legally here, that they're not going to be asked these questions. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And this will update addresses and make it more up-to-date records.
That's absolutely
Doesn't the federal government actually do that also? If somebody from out of state moves to Maryland or moves from Maryland to Georgia or whatever, isn't there a national registry for people? Because I know we had one candidate actually voted in, I believe, Florida and come up here and voted.
You may be thinking of the National Change of Address Registry, which is used for sort of different purposes for in the list maintenance process for the voter registration process. But it's just not included in this bill, and there are some sort of technical reasons why it's not a great way to do sort of affirmative voter registration address updates.
Right. One last question: someone comes here from out of state, they have Real ID. Will they be automatically, once they change their license, will they automatically be registered either opt out or opt out?
So if somebody was coming from out of state, they would need to reapply for Real ID in the state of Maryland. If they provided documentation that established that they're a U.S. citizen and they meet all the other requirements for voter registration, then they would be put in the streamlined, upgraded automatic voter registration process. Yes.
One last question. I'm sorry. But if that happens, will the state that they move from, will they be automatically notified that they've moved and changed of address and they can't vote in that other state?
There are provisions. It's not part of this bill, but there are provisions elsewhere in Maryland law. There's sort of interstate data exchanges that could provide that information. It depends on the state where they're moving from.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1342, House Bill 1018, Delegate Chi. And whoever you would like to bring up with you. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to bring up my panel. All right. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair, the hardworking members of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm Delegate Lily Chi here to present House Bill 1018, which exempts personal property taxes for manufacturing equipment and inventory. Manufacturing, as we all know, is a strategic industry for the state of Maryland because it's a very high value generator for our state. And also it's a great exporter. In fact, Maryland manufacturing contributes $27 billion to Maryland's economy, employs over 100,000 individuals, and accounts for over 60% of our state's exports. But manufacturing is also a very risky and expensive business because of the equipment and inventory the businesses have to stay in business and produce goods. That is why we have this bill, HB 1018, to lessen the burden for local personal property taxes for these businesses. Currently in Maryland, our state law allows local counties and the municipalities to exempt manufacturing businesses from personal property tax. While just about all counties in Maryland have such exemption for manufacturing, only 1 in 3 municipalities have such exemption on the books. So what that means is, for example, in Prince George's County, 1 city charges manufacturers 2% for personal property tax that they must have for production, while just a half mile north, another town would charge just 0.8%, which is a huge difference. And this kind of dramatic differences in local taxation for manufacturing causes not only confusion, but uncertainty in business making decisions about investing and expansion for their productions. HB 1018 seeks to address this issue by proposing a statewide local exemption for personal property taxes for equipment and inventory for manufacturers, because manufacturing requires equipment and inventory, which make them a lot more expensive as an industry sector overall than other industries. And by doing so, this legislation also seeks to level the playing field for our smaller businesses, because vast majority of the Maryland manufacturers are small, and those who locate in municipalities tends to be small as well. Again, we are not asking local municipalities to give up all of their personal property taxes, nor are we asking them to give up all of personal property taxes for manufacturers. Just a portion relates to equipment and inventory. So since counties already exempt personal property tax, this bill really only applies to a small fraction of Maryland manufacturers that are currently located within municipalities. And if this committee decides that you want to further narrow the scope to define the size and revenue of the businesses to be even smaller, which is vast majority of Maryland manufacturers, then we'll be happy to work with you on that. Finally, Maryland manufacturing industries are very diverse. We're talking about craft breweries and wineries to airplane parts and chips. And we as a state are really on the cusp of a manufacturing renaissance if we make the strategic decision to make the right investments. So with that, I would just turn to my panel. I would like to start with my first witness, Julie Barati with Denizens Brewing.
Thank you, Delegate Chi. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and members of the committee. My name is Julie Verratti, and I am one of the founders of Denizens Brewing Company in Riverdale Park. We are a small, family-owned and operated manufacturing company and have been in business for over 10 years. I'm here in support of HB 1018, which will exempt small businesses from being taxed on manufacturing equipment and inventory. When we opened our operations in Riverdale Park, we had to personally guarantee debt just shy of $3 million to build out our facility and purchase all the necessary equipment. Each year, we pay thousands of dollars to the county, even with manufacturing equipment and inventory being exempted from personal property taxes. However, our municipal government has not exempted those categories. Because of that, they've recently set us a bill for more than $18,500 for one single year, simply having this equipment and inventory in our possession. That represents more than 1% of our annual revenue, not profit, revenue. We don't outright own any of this equipment. $18,500 is more than our monthly debt payment against the very equipment we're being taxed on with the current personal property tax rules. Being taxed at this level is blocking our ability to pay down the almost $2 million we still owe. There are real-world consequences to taxing small businesses like this. It's the difference between hiring another person or giving our current employees a raise. It prevents us from purchasing more equipment, which means we're not growing, we're not adding more jobs, nor are we generating more activity in the local economy. At the most drastic level, it can mean having to close our doors because we can't afford to exist anymore, or because no matter how hard we try or how much we cut costs or raise prices, the ability to make a profit is just no longer possible. And once that happens, owning a business doesn't make sense anymore. I'm asking for this committee to please vote in favor of HB 1018 and help small manufacturers succeed in the state. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Kelly Schultz, and I'm here representing as the CEO of the Maryland Tech Council. And on behalf of our nearly 800 members, I am very pleased to offer my strong support to House Bill 1018. This bill would exempt personal property in the possession of a person engaged in a manufacturing business that is a small or medium-sized enterprise from the property tax. Incentivizing manufacturing activity is a key strategy for helping to grow Maryland's innovation ecosystem. That is why MTC is focused on supporting the manufacturing industry. Our BioHub initiative is helping to train workers of all skill and educational levels how to get jobs in the biomanufacturing sector. Small and medium-sized manufacturing companies of all types could benefit from this bill. This bill specifically applies to companies engaged in research and development, identification, design, or genetic engineering of biological materials for research and manufacture, and the design, development, or creation of computer software. However, the research and development of such new products is costly, in addition to Maryland being a generally costly state to do business overall. MTC focuses its advocacy efforts on policies that help to increase Maryland's economic competitiveness in the region. We do applaud this bill, the bill sponsor, for introducing a policy that will help reduce tax burden for Maryland's small and medium-sized manufacturing businesses and create an incentive to continue to innovate. We urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Brad Rifkin on behalf of Maryland's breweries, wineries, and distilleries, the other 250 members, not including Ms. Verratti, who's here testifying in support. We're all in favor of this. As I'm sure you all know, and you heard from some of the previous bills with members of the alcohol industry up here, it's a very difficult time. Inflation is rampant for these members. When it comes to the supply chain, it's been very difficult for our members to even source inventory. And from their perspective, this simply provides them with the tools, as Ms. Verratti said, to potentially reinvest in their business, to reinvest in infrastructure, reinvest in people and employees, which ultimately benefits the state from a revenue standpoint. So for all of those reasons, we respectfully request a favorable report. Thank you.
Questions, Madam Vice Chair?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill. I have a question for Julie to start off. Julie, I know you mentioned your location in Riverdale, but I just wanted, for the benefit of the entire committee, where was your first location?
Our first location was in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Okay, wonderful. In beautiful District 20.
In your district.
Okay. Haven't heard of it, says Delegate Eversole. But on a more serious note, in terms of this tax, it sounds like this is a tax that the state does not collect, but the city was able to levy $18,000 on you. And this is each year?
Correct.
That's quite a bit of money. I wanted to also check with Brad in terms of what you know about the other breweries and wineries. Is this happening more broadly? Is this something that's rare where a city would levy that type of tax? Are the cities using this pretty broadly, or is it kind of here or there? Do you have any sense?
I'll have to get that information for you. It's a great question, but I don't have that with me today.
Okay, no problem. Well, very much appreciate you bringing this bill. Definitely sounds like something we need to address.
Thank you.
Delegate Wims.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just have a simple question. If one of you could tell me, how many manufacturers do we have in the state of Maryland? And if this bill passed, do you think that would bring others to Maryland?
That's an excellent question, Delegate. There are about 4,200 some manufacturers in general across all categories, but this bill does not apply to majority of them because majority of them do not reside in municipalities. They may be in counties beyond the boundary of municipalities. So only a small fraction of them are in municipalities, which this bill would apply because the county is already exempt personal property taxes. Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions for this panel? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Call up the unfavorables, Justin Fiore and Kevin Kennelly. Kevin's abandoned you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Justin Fiore here on behalf of the Maryland Municipal League in opposition to House Bill 1018. I think as a lot of you heard earlier, municipalities are in a place where we need more revenue options and not fewer. We're concerned here that if you look at municipal expenditures, I've provided a chart in my testimony, and you see where our money goes. It's almost exclusively to critical services. And that tends to mean if we have to shift the cost from some business owners, it's going to go to the only other revenue tool we have. That's the residents, right? We're going to have to do that on regular or real property taxes for residents. We just don't have enough other means. So our concern here is if you were to pass this bill, you'd be taking away a valuable tool some jurisdictions can use for equity concerns in terms of who should be paying their fair share of taxes within a jurisdiction. So we would ask you provide an unfavorable report.
Any questions? Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask the same question that I asked before. Do you have a sense of how widely this tax is being used by cities and counties? And I'm trying to get a sense of, how much you're relying on these types of tax dollars.
Thank you for the question, Madam Vice Chair. Yes, in my testimony, I have some numbers. We talked to SSTAT and I worked with the delegate ahead of time, which is why you see this bill right now intended to be targeted to small and medium-sized businesses. When we first looked at the fiscal impact, it was to 29 municipalities in the state at a little bit over $1 billion, but much of that was actually one organization in one town. The remaining impact is to 28 municipalities, totaling each year, or at least in the last year, $432,000. I want to say 15 of those municipalities are in Prince George's County, accounting for 341,000 of that annually.
Would you be open to something that is more of a cap? Would that be something that you think you would be amenable to? I just say that because at the same time, you need businesses to be able to thrive in order for you all to benefit from the economic advantages of these businesses. So I'm not sure if you think $18,000 per year on a small business is reasonable, but perhaps there's a way to find some middle ground. Is that something that you would be amenable to?
I'm always open to working with the committee. I know when it comes to personal property tax, when you buy equipment the first time, it's you tax it at that rate, but that rate does depreciate year over year. So I don't know that we would expect that to remain that high. Equipment does depreciate. But yeah, we're open to talk.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification on that. So I understand the value depreciates, but the rate doesn't change. So even though the value is depreciating, that rate's still stationary, whatever the municipality. So if it's capped, as the equipment depreciates and you're locked in at the lower rate, it's going to be a greater benefit to the business, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Delegate Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious, if they rented this equipment, would they still have to pay personal property taxes on this?
I'll find the answer out for that. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
also, if they lease, I thought, did she say they owned it or they were leasing it?
She's saying she owns it.
Okay, if she was leasing it, I'm just asking this, will she still be paying personal property taxes on that?
I will find out for you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That concludes the testimony on House Bill 1018. Folks, I missed a virtual witness on House Bill 1356, Joel Horwitz, who, if you're in the Howard County delegation, we know well. I apologize. If he is in there, let's bring him up so he can testify.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming back to me, Madam Chair.
Oh, yeah, good. I can't see you. Can we see you, Joel?
I do not have a connected camera.
Well, I will say this. I will, because I messed up, I'm gonna let you testify, but we normally have to see folks.
All right. I didn't see that in your rules.
Well, the rules are my discretion, but I know you and I messed up, so you can go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon again, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee, especially those representing Columbia. In addition to the chair, my District 12A and former Columbia Community Association board member, Delegate Belmark, and former Columbia Council Representative Delegate Wu, and also Delegate Ebersol, who previously worked in Columbia and was my former District 12 delegate. I am Joel Hurwitz. For full disclosure, I'm the Vice Chair of the Harpers Joyce Community Association, Columbia, but I'm testifying today only on my own behalf as an individual. First, for the record, I believe the bill is miscoded. It adds a section to the Homeowners Association Act in the real property article. It is not an election or campaign financing bill as normally used. And for these reasons, I do not understand why this bill is before Ways and Means and not the Environment and Transportation. I was concerned when watching the election committee a couple of sessions ago, considering Delegate Taras's related bill, how the discussion showed a lack of expertise of the complicated homeowner association issues. Nevertheless, I would like to avail the committee's election law expertise. As I submitted in writing, I would like to see a subsection based on election law 13306 independent expenditure report, which to deal with the recent concerns as alluded to by Delegate Wu of outside entities independently seeking to influence the elections, especially for the Columbia Council representatives. And as he alluded to in 2021, the Rouse Project LLC sought to elect its candidates and also ran negative campaigning, and it was unclear which candidates that they were running as themselves or which is an independent expenditure. As I wrote, I believe that using the existing state law modified to deal with the short 3 to 4 week elections in Columbia would deal with the independent expenditure disclosures. And to make an enforcement mechanism, I pointed out that their number of for treble damages. So I hope you get a favorable amendments report.
Okay, thank you very much, Joel. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. And that.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes, again, the hearing for House Bill 1356. Calling the final bill, House Bill 1454. I am going to be very brief. This bill is a statewide bill, but it was born out of Montgomery County having issues. And we have someone here for questions, right? Or are you testifying?
Yeah, I'll give brief testimony.
Oh, okay. Hold on one second. Let me just present the bill. Allows more time to have homestead tax credit applications in to get the credit to offset increases in the local tax revenue, because I believe Montgomery County was having an issue with that. And with that, I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, Josh Greenberg here on behalf of the State Department of Assessments and Taxation. I'll be very brief with my comments. You have my written testimony. Basic idea behind this bill is in 2020, the General Assembly passed House Bill 1200 that basically tied the local income tax offset credit to having a homestead tax credit application on file. I think the general intent of this was to make sure that if you're receiving a tax credit from your county, you should be a primary resident in that county. And the homestead tax credit is one way that sort of one vehicle through which SSTAT verifies that your primary residence is here in the state of Maryland or in the county. So we got a massive influx of homestead tax credit applications. A lot of residents weren't quite aware that they needed to have that on file to receive their local income tax offset credit. And as a result, some people found that they no longer qualified for it or were getting their tax credit clawed back because they didn't have the homestead credit on file. So what this would do, this is authorizing legislation, and it would apply statewide to any county that has the income tax offset credit. Right now, that's just Montgomery County. It would allow them to essentially extend the effective date of House Bill 1200 through to 2025 from its current effective date of 2022, just to give residents a little more time to get that homestead application on file and for us to process the backlog of about 42,000 homestead tax credit applications that we have currently. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay. Oh. Is it a burning question, Delegate Grossman? Delegate Grossman, ask your question.
I can wait.
Okay, thank you. All right, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 1454, and that concludes the bill hearings for the Ways and Means Committee today. Thank you.